right, 5 seconds. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Orange County School Board's regularly scheduled meeting this Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. In case you're wondering about the odd starting time of this meeting, on tonight's agenda, we are taking up our budget hearing, and section 200.065, subparagraph 2E2, Florida statutes requires budget hearings to be held after 5:01 p.m. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Most of our board members are attending in person. However, Member Lopez is attending us telephonically. So let me just check and make sure that Member Lopez is able to join us. Member Lopez, are you with us?
And good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. Okay, I want to remind the board members and the public that we will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus our full attention on the business before us here. To my fellow board members and to anyone who is speaking to us tonight, let me and our staff members, let me remind you to do your best to speak directly into the microphone and close to the microphone so that we can hear you not only in the chambers, but so that we can pick up your voice clearly for YouTube and our Orange TV viewers. And I also want to thank everyone that's here in attendance this evening in advance. We appreciate your presence. We will begin our meetings as we do each meeting with a moment of silence, and then I will invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Jenkins, before we begin with any formal recognitions, I wanted to take a moment to recognize somebody who joined us in our pre-agenda meeting, and unfortunately we didn't get an opportunity to hear from her, but I think it's important that the board and the public have an opportunity to hear from her. She's Miss Florida from the junior team, one of our students, Taylor Stewart with Cypress Creek High School, and that's not what makes her special. What makes her special is she is one of our local ECG success stories. And I wanted to take just a minute to ask Taylor if she would take a moment to join us at to come up to the dais and say a few words. Are you comfortable with that? Okay, thank you. For people who don't know, Orange County School Board recently adopted a requirement that our children participating in sports go through a preliminary ECG test to make sure that there's no abnormality in their heart that might cause serious injury or death. Welcome, Taylor.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And as the board secretary, I have inserted Ms. Taylor as our recognition for today's meeting.
Absolutely.
So it's official.
Absolutely. You are our official recognition for tonight, Ms. Taylor, Ms. Stewart. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Taylor Stewart and I'm a sophomore at Cypress Creek High School. I'm here today to share with you my experience and gratitude of the recent requirement by OCPS for student athletes to have an ECG as part of our athletic clearance. Just like many students and parents, I was annoyed and frustrated to find out a few months back that another step has been added as part of our clearance this year. It was another appointment, another paper in the process, and more money for my parents to spend. My school sent out a message letting people know that an organization called Who We Play For was coming to our school on May 27th, and we could schedule an appointment for $20 to get an ECG done. My mom immediately scheduled one of the first appointments that day. Less than a week after my ECG, my mom received a voicemail from a volunteer at Who We Play For letting her know that my ECG had come back abnormal, and she'd be getting an email with details and next steps. That email had a lot of information, including a potential diagnosis and a list of pediatric cardiologists that we could contact to schedule an appointment. We went that Friday, June 4th, to see Dr. Dedlani at Nemours Children's Hospital, where they did another ECG to confirm that I did in fact have Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. There was concern about my diagnosis because my ECG showed signs of WPW every single time my heart was beating, which meant that this was more of a severe situation than we initially thought. The following week, on June 10th, I went back for a stress test to confirm how my heart would react during exercise, and it was during this appointment that Dr. Dedlani and the surgeon, Dr. Tishma, discovered that my heart continued to show signs of WPW each time my heart was beating, even during a lot of exercise. This meant that the risk was higher of something happening to me during sports or even during my everyday life. Over the next few days, my procedure was scheduled to get rid of the extra passageway in my heart and hopefully stop any potential risk for WPW or cardiac arrest. My procedure was almost 6 hours long, and when the surgeon thought she was done and they had removed the catheters and everything, my heart went into tachycardia and was sustaining over 270 beats per minute. My blood pressure dropped and I started going into cardiac arrest, which proved that if I had not known about this diagnosis and not had this procedure done, it could have been life or death down the road. I have bounced back pretty quickly since my procedure. I'm just still super tired. It was about a month ago, and I have done a follow-up ECG showing no signs of WPW, and I'm so happy to say that I'm all cleared for sports for the 2021-2022 school year. I'm here today to let parents and students know it's understandable to be frustrated that there is another step in this process, but I want you to know that I was an outwardly perfectly healthy 15-year-old girl with no symptoms that I knew of. I've passed my physical every year, and just this past year played volleyball, flag football, and cheered for my school's varsity cheerleading squad. It's a very scary thought that at any moment I could have gone into cardiac arrest and no one would have known why. This happens to people you know. This could happen to your child too. We were just lucky enough to find out before something bad happened and to be proactive to keep my impact on the life lower. This is all thanks to this new ECG requirement implemented by all you ladies here today. I think having this happen to even one student should be reason enough to prove that this requirement for testing is worthwhile. I just want to thank you guys for implementing it because it saved my life. Thank you.
Okay, I, for one, am completely speechless. Thank you so much. And what a reassurance that is. I remember the day that we passed that, how good we all felt about the fact that we might save somebody's life. We would never know for sure if we did or not. And to have you here with your testimony is not just incredibly gratifying to us, but hopefully we can continue to spread that message. That's the key thing. We want every child, not just the ones that are in our sports, but every parent to know that this is something to look out for. We look out for a lot of things with our kids. This is an easy thing to do and a life-saving. So God bless you. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for being totally on top of this and taking such good care of Taylor. Oh, wow. Okay, Karen, Dr. Castrodental, sorry. I'm sorry. Member Coburn? No. I've got buttons
Thank you.
pushed here.
Thank
Yes.
you, Chair.
Yeah.
I think we're all tearing up here.
Yeah.
And that's because we're just so proud of you. Proud of you, Mom and Dad, for getting her in to do that. That night that we passed it, we felt really good because we care about all children. And we have to, as you see, make some really, really difficult decisions. And we care about all of you very, very much. And I met you a few years ago, so when I heard about your story, I was just, again, so proud of you. And I just want to thank you. It's not an easy thing to get up here and speak in front of people. It's one of the biggest fears that people have. So for you to share your story so that it might help someone else and understand that it's worth it to go through this testing, we don't know how many more lives might be saved. So thank you so much. We are all so proud of you, and we cannot wait to see what becomes of you in your future. And for all of you in the audience, also know that because of this experience, Taylor goes and volunteers for the organization that came in to do the screening, who we play for. So that's just the kind of person that she is.
Mm-hmm.
So again, thank you. And we're so proud of you.
Thank you, Member Coburn. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Taylor for coming tonight and sharing your story with us. It was a great story, and I'm so thankful for the entire board that we implemented that test as part of our sports physical, so that we could catch this and other things for our students is so important. Your story is actually shared from me when you shared on Instagram from a board member over in Brevard County, because they had been a big supporter of including this as part of the sports physical, and had been helping who we play for. I think that's, I believe, the name of it, and it was shared with me, and then I immediately shared it with the district. But I read your story, and I was kind of scrolling through and looking at your Instagram, and you're quite accomplished young lady. So congratulations to you and to your parents, and I'm just so thankful that this worked out.
Thank you, Member Gallo. Member Gould.
Kayla, thank you for sharing your story. I wanted to share with the board members. We had a young man into Shepherd's Hope last Thursday night on a follow-up, and his family, for the first time ever, had lost their health insurance, and got the test through who we play it for, and was able to get a follow-up at Shepherd's Hope. Thankfully, he didn't have to have the procedure that you did in the follow-up, but it was a relief to his family to know that we caught that a disruption in his heart arrhythmia, and that they are actually going to continue to watch it, even though he doesn't seem to be in any danger. But he just wants to play soccer and act. So that's what he wants to be able to do. So thank you for highlighting this and making it even easier and more okay for other kids to do it.
Awesome. All right, Mom, Dad, Taylor, you can stick around with us for the rest of the evening if you want. Or since you have been here since before 4, you're free to go. Enjoy the rest of the evening. God bless you. Like everybody said, we want to stay in touch. We want to know what becomes of your wonderful life. Okay, Dr. Jenkins, we have any newly appointed administrators to recognize?
None, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And we have no strategic plan update, which brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Jenkins, are any changes to the agenda as published?
No changes, Madam Chair.
All right, no changes to the agenda. Let me recognize that we have a number of, well, let me first ask for a vote to approve the agenda as published. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
Motion by Member Cobert. Is there a second? Second by Member Byrd. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Member Lopez? Member Lopez, are you with us? All right, I'm going to assume that Member Lopez had to step away for just a minute. Let's come back to, the motion passes with all members present in the chambers voting in the affirmative. We have a number of speakers for...
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
There
I'm
you
sorry.
are. Hello, Member
I'm having
Lopez.
problems. I'm having problem with my
No
my
problem.
computer. But yes, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you so much. Let the record show that the motion passed unanimously. The next item up is the public hearing request for approval of the adoption of the millage. Before that we do that, we have a number of speakers that wish to speak to this issue. I'll take just a minute to remind everybody our rules for providing comment. We do have a code of civility. I don't think we'll have a problem here, but if you're in agreement with something a speaker is saying, do us a favor and either give us a thumbs up or wave so that we can know how many people are in agreement, or if you disagree, a thumbs down. But please refrain from cheering, clapping, booing, or hissing, or any audible sounds. We appreciate the respect that you pay to each of your fellow speakers. And with that, I think that most of these are on the budget, and I'm going to begin with, I'm taking them in the order they came. I'm going to begin with Ms. Dormal. Is Ms. Dormal here? Welcome, Ms. Dormal. I thought you must be, but I didn't see you.
Madam Chair, I just want
Yes.
to let you know we have 2 callers on the line as well.
Oh, thank you so much. And we have 2 callers on the line. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Dormal.
Thank you. So good afternoon. I'm here to speak about the district budget and priorities. Budgets reveal what is valued and what is appreciated. Your budget exposes what your priorities are. What does CTA believe the district's budgeting priorities should be? Employee salaries should be a priority, especially when district leaders asked teachers to make the impossible possible last year, a year like no other. The teachers certainly did, and then some. Teachers are professionals and expect and deserve a raise that reflects their expertise, devotion, and commitment. What should be a priority? A longevity supplement for veteran teachers should be a priority. They should be rewarded for their years of loyalty and devotion. Veteran teachers were left behind last year by Tallahassee's mandate to raise every teacher to a minimum salary of $47,500. It is unacceptable that teachers with 10 years of experience make a little more than teachers who are just starting their careers. To retain quality experienced veteran teachers, a longevity supplement should be a priority. What should be a priority? Affordable benefits should be a priority. Insurance increases penalize those who get sick. The members of our bargaining unit cannot afford increases in insurance deductibles. What should be a priority? Providing supplements or paid hours for teachers, guidance counselors, lead nurses, and others who put in extra hours to advance student achievement, address student mental health concerns, or ensure healthy schools. What should be a priority? School health and safety. Teachers' working conditions determine students' learning conditions. With over $850 million in federal ESSER funds, OCPS must prioritize health and safety. We cannot put students first if teachers are last. It is essential that our professional experts, the dedicated teachers and instructional staff, should be a priority. When the district sets its budget priorities, it is essential that student and employee health and safety be a priority. We request that OCPS leaders rethink their priorities in forming their budget process to be able to recruit and retain quality teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Normal. Let's hear from our next speaker, Ashley Modesto. And following Ms. Modesto, we'll hear from Ann Alsop. Okay.
Hi, my name's Ashley Modesto. My address is 49 Burntree Lane, Apopka, Florida, 32712. I am here coming to you as I begin to enter my 6th year in OCPS as a teacher. I feel like I've been at OCPS much longer. As you may know, I was a student, K through 12, and I've also had the pleasure of almost my entire family being an employee of OCPS, including my mother, with 28 years currently in the district. I saw the way that OCPS used to be. I saw the way it treated its teachers, the investment it put in ensuring that we had the top quality educators who were up to date on current practices, and also the top quality education support staff. When I saw the new budget proposal, I was heartbroken. I love my job. I love being an educator. I love my students. I like to think that I work at the best school. I think Ms. Felder would agree with me, but it's hard, sometimes when I see a budget like that. I turned 30 this past weekend, and I feel like this is where I really begin to focus on my career, and I pray that I am able to provide for my family as others have, that I'm able to, whenever I decide to have kids, that I won't have to continue working additional jobs as I do now, that I will be invested in the same way, or at least close to the way that I invest in my students. I know the way that OCPS used to be. I've seen the things that they used to do. I remember my mother going on trips, going through things, and I just want it to be like that. I want the teachers to not have to work multiple jobs to keep food on their table and their power on. Supplements once again, do not pay bills. You know, it is temporary. We need something permanent. We have to have something permanent in order to ensure that teachers will be permanent. I think that is a long process. Last time I spoke, I was challenged to go to Tallahassee. I did. I went to Tallahassee several times, and during COVID, I went to Tallahassee via Zoom. I spoke to our state representatives, and they sent me back here. And so as much as I love that 4-hour drive back and forth, I will continue to do it because I believe this is a career worth investing in, and I will continue to fight for it for my mother, my sister, my aunts, who all work for OCPS. I believe that we could do better, and I think that we must in order to ensure that we have the best teachers, the best support staff to give our kids the best education. And I want to say thank you for your time this evening. I really do appreciate the hard work that you women do. And I'm definitely happy that I'm in the classroom and not in your seat, but we definitely need to ensure the best for everyone. Thank you.
Ms. Modesta, I can't tell you how happy we are you're in the classroom, and I hope that at some point we will all be able to be in a position of rewarding you the way you deserve. Thank you for being here, and thank you for championing this in Tallahassee as well. Thank you. We're going to hear from Ann Alsop, and then we're going to hear from Bonnie Cox. Hi, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ann Alsop. I'm from Apopka, Florida. I'm here today to speak to you about the budget as an Orange County teacher. I began my career with OCPS in 1985. After 10 years and 3 children, I left education for a career in real estate because the demands of education were too great to be the kind of mom I wanted to be to my own children. When the real estate market suffered a setback, I came back to teaching and education. Our education had changed and technology was just coming to the forefront of educating our children. So I sought my master's degree at the time in education, media, design, and technology to enhance my high school mathematics classroom with technology. As a single mother of 4, I struggled financially and once again returned to real estate to support my family. 4 years ago, with my children finally raised, I returned to teaching once again. To make ends meet, I continued to work part-time in real estate. I love what I do, despite working harder than ever before. Last year, the state provided money to raise the starting pay of teachers in Florida. When all was said and done, I found myself with 18 years of experience, a master's degree that the state does not recognize, despite its profound contribution to my students. I was making $625 more per year than a beginner teacher. With the proposed $25 cost of living increase, my salary this year will be $48,150. I will never make as much money as teachers that I formerly worked with years ago because Orange County apparently stopped valuing their teachers. Again, I love what I do, and I would just like to receive compensation that is more commensurate to the work I do. Last year, I got an $825 increase in pay, but no bonuses for my effectiveness in the classroom from Orange County or the state. I worked in difficult conditions as a hybrid teacher. My understanding was that the state was providing a $1,000 bonus for those who taught last year. While I appreciate the fact that you want to pay this to all teachers, this money was for last year. When you turn around and propose this as part of my compensation for this year, it's insulting. Please find a way to adequately compensate the teachers who give so much to the children of Orange County.
Thank you. All right, let's hear it from Ms. Cox, followed by Santa Javiz, I believe. Ms. Cox, welcome.
Bonnie Cox, 32818. I am not present this evening to solicit for a pay raise, for I am cognizant that OCPS, nor any other district for that matter, has the financial means to pay my colleagues and I what we are worth. The value of a great teacher is priceless. You all will decide on raises for yourselves. I am here to remind you that we are all here for the children. This board continuously proclaims that you all value and appreciate teachers. However, oftentimes your actions speak otherwise. Your actions suggest that you hold leadership, personnel, and administrators in high esteem, as you should. But do not forget your teachers. When an adult is asked about their school experience, it is rare that they mention an administrator. Although I must say, Mike Armbruster, he is one of them. Majority of the time, what adults will mention is a teacher. In fact, I am a teacher because of all the phenomenal teachers I experienced as I traveled through OCPS as a student from kindergarten through 12th grade. I am here to request that this board finds ways to demonstrate that you truly value teachers. Maybe that could be by not gutting the safety manual that protects us and our students. Maybe it's by finding funds to assist us in paying our recurring bills. I believe where there is a will, there is a way. And I feel confident that this board can find a way. After all, as David Putnam says, a country that fails to value its teachers fails to value its future.
Thank you. Let's hear from Santa. Help me out with your last name if you wouldn't mind.
My name is Sana Hafiz, S-A-N-A, not sure where the T came from.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Yes.
I apologize.
So once again, my name is Sana Hafiz. I am with the Orlando Dream Defenders. I'm a University of Florida alumni and a community organizer. First, I want to say that we stand with the Black and brown residents of the historic city of Winter Park in demanding that their voices finally be heard and respected. I am here to discuss the way that the budget has been used to begin a new magnet school in Winter Park without any care for the desires of the Black and brown constituents. Winter Park is a historic Black neighborhood with one of the first public schools for Black children in the United States. But today, there are only 20 to 50 Black kids left in the area due to gentrification and disenfranchisement. This is also why critical race theory is essential to be taught in schools. These families have been fighting for a school in Winter Park for generations. It's a slap in the face to this community to find out that a new modeling and simulation magnet school is coming to the area. The residents and organizers have pleaded to be a part of this process in determining what kind of curriculum and type of magnet school will be built in Winter Park. The students that live near the school and their parents deserve to have a say in what kind of school is coming. And if that school does not serve the existing community, it is simply another tool of gentrification to push out Black families. Community organizers such as LaWanda with Equity Council have been fighting for years and were shut out of meetings and lied to multiple times. The only reason we know for as a fact that this school is coming is because an informal announcement was made to LaWanda, not to the families in Winter Park, not to the residents, the parents of the children that live in that district. LaWanda has been slandered with racially tinged insults as she demands the rights of Black Winter Park residents to be respected. Additionally, earlier in this meeting, a measure was, sorry, one second, my phone is glitching. A preventative measure was seen to show success. A young girl herself said one student is enough of a reason to go through with this testing, this preventative measure, the school physical. Why is a mask mandate any different? It's a preventative measure to keep our students safe. It's very clear that you value your comfort more than the lives of Black and brown students. Their deaths don't matter.
To the budget, there's no budgetary items.
That's fine. I'm
Thank you.
concluding, so.
All right, thank you so much.
So I'm not allowed to finish?
Well, not on the subject of masks, but if you want to talk about
That's all
something
I had to say
agenda.
on that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you being here.
My final statement is on behalf of CFAR. CFAR has made it clear that they expect that the budget reflects the desires of the residents, and they also have made it very clear, once again, that they will work day and night to make sure no one is reelected that doesn't respect that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take our next speaker, and that would be Kate Hammond, followed by David Grimm. Is Miss Hammond here? Oh, hello. Welcome, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Sorry, I'll try to keep only one of us speaking. Kay Hammond, Gilsum Court 32835, District 4. Excuse me. Many of us can agree that late July has a Sunday night feeling for many educators. There's a shared exhaustion in this room between all of us, and I appreciate you. I hope you appreciate all the teachers who are speaking here tonight. I should be enjoying my last week off with Benjamin, but he won't take a bottle. So he's here, I'm here. I hope you can understand how valuable this time is to me. I should be enjoying my time with Benjamin, but I feel the weight of a district that doesn't care about myself or my husband, who have given a collective 27 years to this district. The last 2 bargaining sessions were messy and unprofessional, and I thought very not civil. There was a disrespect and arrogance displayed. And when you speak to our bargaining team, who are OCPS educators, without civility, you are speaking to all 14,000 educators without civility. I received my back to school letter today, and it was noted we would accelerate our students academically through rigorous and engaging standards-based coursework, getting students back on track with social and emotional learning, and high expectations and restorative practices in coursework that is data-driven. I, in turn, expect the same from OCPS. Data tells us that institutions that invest in their employees are more successful. These are my expectations. If OCPS can pour money into different computer programs and our top-heavy administrative roster, they can certainly fund the people inside the classroom every single day. Last year, angry parents stood before you, in particular, our ESC and ESOL students. Parents demanded better. ESC teachers in particular face both physical and emotionally daunting challenges every single day. You promised better. Refusing to budget raises for those teachers is a failure to those students and parents. As a parent myself, I cannot help but wonder why my son's iReady score seems more important than the women and the men that stand before him every day. His teachers deserve better. He deserves better. As a parent, I care. I demand that investment in my son's education. You fund what you value. Lip service doesn't pay my bills. As one of the largest school districts in the nation, our pay scale dwarfs in comparison to similar-sized districts. I myself will be teaching a new curriculum this year, but I will no longer be able to afford to work unpaid away from my own children. I know I am worth more. Lastly, during negotiations, your chief negotiator talked about the math of the budget and the insurance, quote-unquote, adjustments. Let's call them insurance increases. If any teacher is planning on having a child, I'm happy to share Benjamin's NICU bill from January, the cost of my delivery, the cost of prenatal specialists, his physical therapist, his occupational therapy, my unpaid days off, the real cost of these insurance adjustments, because they are a burden to my family. Then I can share how I spent Benjamin's first days. Folks, our district is bleeding teachers, bleeding them. I spent the first day of Benjamin's life on Microsoft Teams in the NICU talking to my students because we could not find substitutes. And when you're postpartum, you cannot separate the difference between how you love your own kids and your students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, David Grimm.
David Grimm, 32832 in District 2. That's Member Lopez's district. I'm a former teacher of 21 years, all in Orange County Public Schools. I'm also a proud graduate of Colonial High School, and for over 30 years, OCPS has been a huge part of my life. I'm a parent of an OCPS student, a husband of an OCPS teacher, and a concerned citizen, as well as an advocate for teachers, students, parents, and this wonderful community. Many wonder what led me to my decision to leave OCPS, but the reality is, I have never left. You see, education is my passion, and this passion will never fade. History shows that this budget meeting is a formality, but I still believe there is some information that needs to be shared. Last week, the Orange County Teachers Union declared an impasse as another round of bargaining demonstrated the district's priority in their annual budget. This is the third impasse since 2013 and the fourth in the past 11 years. The district has shown what they value. Sadly, the teachers of OCPS haven't felt valued for quite some time. Really? A $25 cost of living adjustment? You invest in what you value. The following data is the average allocation on various categories since the 2016-2017 school year. The average cost of around 400 school-based admin, $150,000. Recently, over 200 administrators were classified as senior management bringing the total to near 300, where most Florida districts include less than 10. This gives nearly 20%, or what's equal to $24,000 to $63,000 per year to these individuals' retirement funds. Curriculum, training, and technology, over $115 million. The offices of the superintendent, deputy superintendent, chief academic officer, chief of staff, and chief of communication officer, over $33 million. The average cost of 14,000 instructional employees, $84,000. You invest in what you value. The average revenue during this same time period of the 1 mil tax voted on by the citizens of Orange County, over $141 million. Many of the other large districts in Florida, such as Broward County, have designated a large percentage of this money directly to instructional compensation. This gives up to $8,000 added to annual salary supplements for teachers in Broward County. School board members, I am asking that you create a committee of Orange County citizens to oversee how the $1 million are allocated in OCPS, so that when this referendum is on the 2022 ballot, there's accountability and that the majority of the money is allocated for all instructional compensation. Other than parent involvement, there is no larger factor in a student's success than a teacher. During the 2020-21 COVID-19 school year, the parents and community members of Orange County realized this. The question now is,
Mr.
what do you
Graham?
value? Your investment will ring loud and clear.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. All right, let's hear from Rita Harris, followed by Rebecca Jacquez.
Hello, everybody. Is it okay for me to move the microphone down
Yes,
a little
it
bit?
is.
Okay. All right. My name is Rita Harris, 13547 AS Road. That's Orlando, 32837. I'm going to be really honest with you. This is the first time I have attended a school board meeting. I don't know if I should say this in a room full of teachers, but I homeschooled my daughter. Not because of teachers, though, and I always make a point to say that. Because my daughter right now is going to UCF. She's very smart. She's on the dean's list. And it has always been because of my friends who were teachers. And that really speaks to how selfless they are, because even when they're not getting paid, they would still take time to help me. Any questions I had, my friends who were educators always took the time to sit down with me and give me any assistance that I needed. And hearing all these teachers talk about the lack of respect and the lack of pay they get really makes me want to cry, because I think of all the things they go through. I think of going through September 11th with my daughter, and she's just one little person that I'm trying to shield from all the negativity in the world. And these people have a classroom of little souls that they have to protect from all the evil. And then we have school shootings, and we have all these things. So to keep it on topic, I agree with all of the comments before me saying that there needs to be allocation to pay teachers more. They deserve so much more. I mean, teachers should be making 10 digits easily. I mean, you have to be highly skilled to do the job. You got to put up with a lot, and it takes a lot of time. Also, I agree with what Sana said about the young lady, and I'm just going to make one real point here. I see that you're following CDC guidelines right here, and I ask that you do the same when it comes to masks. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna, in case we have more people here to speak on masks, I know those are short comments, but we are going to stick to the subject on the agenda, or every meeting from now until at least the end of the year, we will be hearing mask comments. So in order to stay on schedule, please, if your comments are related to the budget, we'd love to hear from you, or anything else on the agenda, but masks are not on the agenda. Let's hear from Rebecca. Rebecca, thank you, and help me with your last name, and then Drew Pouts.
My name is Rebecca Jacks. I live at 13837 Ancilla Boulevard, Windermere, Florida. My daughter is a rising 7th grader at Bridgewater Middle School. She participated in Launch Ed for the entire school year last year. Excuse me. And I actually did come here today to speak about masks, but as I reflect upon the opportunity that you have, I think in looking at the budget, as someone shared earlier, there's absolutely, when there's a will, there is a way. So as you look at the budget spending for this coming year, I ask you to consider the value and the priority that can be given to fighting some of the things that are coming from leadership within our state from up above. I also ask for you to please indulge me in reading a statement from a friend of mine who is actually the president of the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Florida. After the past school year, it's more critical than ever that our children receive quality education face to face with their teachers. The goal for the coming school year should be to keep as many students in school as possible. To that end, the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Florida calls for every eligible person to receive a COVID-19 vaccination and for the mandatory wearing of masks in elementary and middle schools.
I'm sorry. I don't know how to be more clear. That is not on the budget, not on the agenda.
I'm asking you to spend your resources
and I'm telling
to
you,
make
no.
this.
And that's not really related. And we are going to do this every single meeting. So please abide by the rules. Thank you. Let's take the
Thank
next
you.
speaker. That's
Thank
not
you.
on the agenda, but thank you. It's not that I don't agree with you. I want to be clear about that. But we do have rules and we follow those rules. Let's hear from Drew, followed by Matthew Hazel. I believe that's the. How are you? Welcome, good to see you.
Drew Pouts, 4206 Haverstraw Avenue, 32812. I'd like to start by giving you some quotes from 2019 school board. Member Gallo said, "We don't like 27% of our teachers not having a living wage and being overburdened with the cost of living here in Orange County, and we want to do better." Member Lopez said, "I remember school board member Karen, school board member Angie, and myself apologizing because we did not speak up enough. I think that this time we're going to have more feedback, we're going to have more experience." Member Gallo at a later meeting said, "You deserve so much more than you're currently being paid. We're on the same side. Our end goal is the same, to get you more money, to get you a better raise." You said, "Take the fight to Tallahassee." We did, several thousand of us. And as I walked next to Member Castor-Dental for about half a mile, she knows, 14 of us stayed for another day, myself included, to meet with senators and representatives, as well as make our presence known in the rotunda as they entered the session. We've made our plight known. The governor later declared the year of the teacher, which was good PR, but that's about it. Moving forward, base salary increases later that did nothing for veterans except increased compression. Then COVID struck and we stepped up. We put ourselves on the front line. We worked tirelessly to teach hybrid and face-to-face with masks. We heard, "We didn't know. We'll do better in the future." Now you know, and now is the future. Will you live up to those words? Our budget documents continually compare the budget to the CPI-adjusted peak of 2007 and show less purchasing power, using that to rationalize underpaying your employees and causing them to be victims of that same inflation. When many of our teachers make less than those from the period with similar experience, how about you calculate how much we're being shorted, then adjust for CPI, and publish that for the public to see each year? I don't think you're going to have sympathy anymore at that point. I've emailed public comments regarding how the proposed insurance copay and deductible increases will lower short-term utilization costs, but studies show missed preventative care ends up causing higher hospitalization in the long run. We have to stop being penny wise but dollar stupid. This hurts employees' finances and wellness, as well as the long-term stability of the insurance fund. When analyzing per pupil expenditures, district indirect costs per pupil accounts for more than 5% of our costs, while Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Osceola all spend less than 3% at the district. Compared to the other 4 large districts and our 4 neighboring districts, only Volusia spends more money per pupil outside the school. Rough calculations based on FTE and per pupil spending say that 2% difference would be around $38 million recurring dollars that could be spent in the schools on things such as teacher salary. We're a large district with the advantage of economies of scale, which should result in less overhead, not more. We can't be the one thing that you're constantly saying there's no money for, but not controlling costs elsewhere. You've consistently underpaid your employees, and with the seller's housing market and skyrocketing local rent, your employees are suffering. Are you going to do better as promised?
Thank you, sir. Is it Matthew Hazel? Nicholas Anderson will be next. welcome.
I was also asked to remind you that you have people on the phone.
Pardon me, I tell you what, can you pull the mic up a little bit? I don't want you to have to bend over. Thank you.
I was asked to remind you that you have people waiting on the phone as well.
I thought we have one caller. Two? Yes.
Okay.
And pre-agenda, we rotate back and forth. I think what we have generally done is now that people can come in, and thank you for reminding me, but for the folks that have taken the time to come down here, we've been taking them first. But thank you for reminding me. We will definitely get to everybody on the phone.
All right. Matthew Hazel, 10108 Matchlock Drive, Orlando, Florida, 32821. Shame. Shame on all of you. After your teachers left everything on the field for you last year, in a year where Social Security is raising their COLA 6% given inflation, you didn't offer 6%, or 3, or 2, or 1, or 0.5%, or 0.1%. You offered close to 0.20% COLA to your 14,000 teachers, a COLA of $25. You budgeted $0 for raises. That budget, $0 for raises. Earlier, a teacher came up here and said she didn't envy you, your seats up there on the dais. You have to earn those seats, and you have to show your voters that you deserve them. I live in District 4. I vote. And if you don't change course and you don't budget raises for your employees who went above and beyond for you in the middle of a pandemic, then you will prove to me, and you will prove to every voter here, and you will prove to every voter in Orange County that you don't deserve to sit where you're sitting. And come next election, all of us will remember. And please don't thank me for speaking, and please don't thank me for teaching. Words don't mean anything. Actions matter. So act or don't, but know that we're watching you.
Nicholas Anderson, thank you. Followed by Ashley. I am going to butcher this name too. Hopefully there's only one Ashley. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Nicholas Anderson. I live at 10846 Waterford Court, Orlando, Florida, 32821. I think the most important thing that we need to understand is that when we are here again to talk about the budget as teachers, and when I talk about the budget all the time as a member of the bargaining team for CTA, we need to remember this is not just a discussion about this year's budget. This is a discussion about how this year's budget is going to impact the future of this district and the students who attend the schools here. When we hear continuously that there is no money in the budget, it needs to be understood. There is no money in the budget because you didn't put any there. There is no money in the budget as it is written. And as it is written, every year we have line items that are always well in excess of what the expectation is year over year over year over year. We go back and we see what the projected budget is, what the actual spend is, and there is always a massive difference between the two. And the difference ends up being saved. Conservative budgeting practices are an important part of the healthy fiduciary responsibility of everyone in this room and is something that teachers and students and community members need. But there is a point at which we go beyond conservative and we become miserly, especially when we see that in many cases, for example, with the insurance trust, projected in the red, ends in the black. We see constantly the way in which we are told we need to save money in case if there is an emergency. If this last year has not been an emergency, I don't know what is. And yet continually, we cannot spend any more. We cannot alter our budget priorities. What we need is a budget that is more in line with the reality of what is actually spent. And when that has happened, suddenly recurring dollars can be found. They can't be found if you continue to write it with the same mentality that it has been written. Because there is an emergency right now, and the emergency is every year the amount of vacancies that we have is increasing, and it will continue to get worse, as now we are adjusted for income more expensive than San Francisco or New York City. We are now becoming one of the fastest growing, most unaffordable communities in the United States of America. Meanwhile, cities with similar metropolitan areas as us pay teachers 5, 10, 12, 20 grand more. What we are asking for is a little bit more so we can keep our head above waters, and what's responding is you see those classrooms emptying. We build a school system from the classroom out. Because if you fill the front office with administration and you fill all of the secretary positions, that's all very important. But if there are no teachers in that room, you don't have a school. And we are on track to become just like Hawaii is right now, with a revolving door of teachers who come in for a year or two, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right out of education school, and then they're gone again. And that is the exact future that we are looking at, and that is what's happening today. And it has to begin by going back and changing the way that we approach and think about things.
Ashley, followed by Moshami Robinson. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Ashley Freem, and I have been a teacher with OCPS for the past 6 years. I'll be starting my 7th this year. 1 year ago, the district announced that they would delay teacher pay at the beginning of the year. I frantically applied for mortgage assistance, looked in my freezer to assess my food supply, and investigated what I need to do to get help paying the electric bill. I thought it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. When I've explained to my friends and family that we have been offered a $25 raise, they laugh. They imagine the worst and they go, a week, right? When I say no, their eyes grow wide and they say, a month? And I still have to shake my head. I explained to my mother that it was technically more than a penny, but less than 2 cents an hour. At the height of the recession in 2008, while I was working in retail, even then I was offered a dollar a raise an hour. No one can escape the headlines that the price of everything from rent to groceries is skyrocketing. My income-based student loan payment has largely stayed the same as my career as an educator. It was projected to go up because they thought that in your career you would make more money, you would get further from the poverty line. I haven't. It is shameful that the district has neglected the thousands of teachers that work for OCPS. I urge you to dig deeper, look harder, and show up for your teachers like they show up for this community every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm
Welcome.
Moshami Robinson, Orlando, Florida, 32810. I'm going to go ahead and put my Olympic gold medal on so I feel validated as a teacher here in Orange County. And I think that that's important. I've been teaching for Orange County Public Schools for a decade. I've come in, given speeches in school board meetings on behalf of our young people, and I'm an advocate for our young people. I also represent Team USA on the Racial and Social Justice Council. So what I stand before you guys today is a lot more than just about the students and the salaries, but it's actually about our social emotional health and our well-being. And I have buried 5 of our students. And I am currently on a leave of absence, sitting here trying to decide, do I even come back into the classroom? Because what is most important is our health and our well-being of not only the educators, but our young people as well. I know that we have a mental health program that we're going to be working out with the Sheriff's Department. I can tell you guys that I started the yoga program in Orange County. I designed the program that Donna taught at Edgewater High School. I created what's called the Circle every Friday, and the kids sat in the circle. And they asked me to make that a club at Dr. Phillips, and I was denied making it a club. But what I decided to do is I decided to make it a nonprofit called All Ears. And I decided to go to the federal government, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a nonprofit that's worldwide. And it's going to be a safe place where our teenagers can come and sit and talk that we can put in every single school district. What I would like is for Orange County Public Schools to be the school district where we start to get it right. We can talk about masks all day, and we can go sit in the classroom with the kids, but I'm supposed to go tomorrow and set up a 3rd grade classroom. But what am I supposed to tell the kids? I don't even know how our teachers are feeling this way in terms of the salaries. That's why I don't have to have a speech. It's my lifestyle. Many of you guys know in the legal department the things that I've complained about, the way that minority teachers and students have been treated. And I have to be honest, since we're being here and we're being transparent. The Black and Hispanic teachers were left out of the best and brightest. I was a highly effective teacher, and I missed out on $40,000. And I sat beside 2 of my white male colleagues who spoke about buying a truck and fixing a fence, while I sat with another woman who was trying to feed her 5 daughters. And I'm an Olympic gold medalist saying I represent this country. And the athletes right now, Tiana Daniels, who went to our school, she's about to represent us in the 100-meter dash. That's who I took the phone call with. Our athletes now can go out there in Tokyo, stand and give a test and demonstrate about racial and social justice based upon me sitting every day on Friday at 3:00 p.m. leading Team USA. about what's great about this country. And what's great about Orange County is that we have some of the best young people with the best imaginations, the best educators, the best opportunities. We're the 8th largest school district in the nation. We should be the example to the country of how to get it right. 10 of the largest school districts, 5 of them are here in the nation. 5 of them are here in the state of Florida, and none of the other 5 repeat themselves. That means we actually in the state of Florida design and affect the United States of America. And I finally had to come and speak because I think that we need to be the example of getting it right, but we first have to take care of our children as well as our teacher. And it's not just about a dollar, it is definitely about our mental. So that's what I come to say. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, let's take our first caller.
Our first caller is Alexandria.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Maroka, zip code 32806. Last year, teachers were heroes. We were building the plane as we flew it. Last year, I did 3 jobs. I taught in person, I taught fully launched classes, and I taught hybrid. You commended us on taking on such a daunting task. Yet here we are, begging for a livable wage in 2021. Let's look at some facts. OCPS is the 9th largest school district in the United States, yet we rank 49th in the nation for pay. OCPS is the 4th largest district in Florida, and we rank 18th for pay. How embarrassing for those who make the decisions. We teach in one of the lowest paid states, yet OCPS's vision is to ensure every student has a promising and successful future. That's a lot. They expect so much from us and give so little in return. What about my future? What about my child's future? The cost of basic necessities have gone up drastically since we went through these negotiations 2 years ago. Median home prices in the Orlando area have gone up 19% in a year. Coupons for free coffee from McDonald's won't cover the increase in my property taxes. Here's the thing. The school board knows all of these facts. The lawyers or superintendent, they know. And they show us how much they care by giving us heavily taxed bonuses. They're going to tell us that the money isn't there and that it's impossible. Teachers, think about all of the things we did last year that initially seemed impossible. We got it done. Over and over, we have heard them say, we have heard you say that you'd have to dip into the reserves to give us raises. How do you think we were able to teach during a pandemic and still provide the quality of education that OCPS expects? Do you think we just had that energy stored up inside us? No, we used up our reserves. Now you can use up some of yours. We want a raise that is consistent with the amount of work we do for our students, their families, and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take our next caller.
Our next caller is Michelle.
Welcome.
Hello?
Hello, welcome. Michelle?
Hi, it's Michelle Ramirez. Hi. First, before you start the timer, I just want to say welcome to Ms. Felder to the board. Congratulations. My address is 6612 Hilltop Road, Orlando, Florida, 32810. I was finally able to purchase a 60-year-old home just before the housing boom. It is the only home I could afford, and it needs a lot of work. On my salary, I never thought it would happen. But thanks to student loans being put on hold, the stimulus checks, and a generous friend, and most of all, a car accident settlement, I did it. I literally had to break my back to buy a home. And I still have to have someone living with me to help me with the bills. Repair costs petrify me. If my water pipes go, I'll be bathing in my neighbor's hose. I want all of you to think about your struggle. For those of you who are teachers, did you struggle on your salary or depend on others for help? Dr. Jenkins, think back to your teacher salary. Did it ever add up? Did you ever just want to go do something fun to relieve the stress of the job and be worried about the cost? Or charge it on a credit card and have to pay it off over a year? Or did you just sit down, sigh, stare off into space, and grade papers instead? Did you ever have to choose between health care or car repair? Did you think that was fair? I don't like to brag. I have always had to work hard for everything in my life. But right now, I'm going to brag about some things because I earned them. Number one, highly effective since year one of my profession. Number two, promoted to department chair beginning of year two. Number three, recommended for clinical educator certification and had my admin bring district personnel in my classroom as a model in year three. Number four, mentor and intern supervisor since year four. Number five, recognized as a leader within the district in year five. Number six, runner-up teacher of the year in year six. Number seven, teacher of the year in year seven. And finally, I will receive a salary of about $200 more than a first-year teacher I mentor in year 8 of my profession. Now, the last one isn't a brag, it's a heartbreaking embarrassment. Veteran teachers have been continually slapped in the face, and my mask can no longer hide it. I'm so happy for our new teachers, but all of the hard work I did for merit pay was just erased. Before any of you or your staff go back to the bargaining table in the future, before any of you cast a vote on a salary package or a budget, remember your past and how you felt, and consider operating with this last bit in mind. No one who works for the very future of this world deserves to struggle for their own. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any more callers? All right, we thank you all for being here. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I do thank you for being here. And I think this is probably not the time to get into a dialogue over what we can and can't do, but I look forward to us proceeding forward, and hopefully there's a point where we work together and can do better than we are right now. Let's take the next item on the agenda, which is Dr. Jenkins' budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doreen Concolino, who is our interim Chief Financial Officer, assisted by Judith Padres, Budget Director, and certainly by Rick Collins, our former CFO, will walk us through the tentative budget. Just a reminder, the task tonight is to adopt the total millage and the tentative budget. Ms. Concolino.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good evening, School Board Chair, board members. I'm going to bring you your FY22 tentative budget. We'll start with our agenda. Here's our agenda for today's presentation. We will review the proposed millage, proposed budget, and ultimately, you will need to adopt the total millage and then adopt the 2021-22 tentative budget. We will also establish a date for the final hearing. When you're talking about millage rates, you're talking about property taxes, and property taxes impact both residential and commercial property. Who is responsible for each component that determines your property taxes? Just value, or a property's market value, comes from the property appraiser. The Save Our Homes cap is established by the legislature. The legislature also establishes exemptions, such as the homestead exemption. And they determine the millage rate, which is then approved by the board. On slide 5 are our property tax values to help fund the upcoming school year. This slide is based on the economic and demographic research estimates from March 2021. Last year, we had a 7.5% increase in taxable values. This year, our taxable values increased by 2.5% based upon the certified tax roll by our property appraiser. The current projection, as you can see, is fairly steady growth of around 5% per year over the next 5 years. This year, the state legislature deviated from their practice of rolling back the required local effort to allow for an increase in taxable property values to fund the needs of education. The required local effort is a specific amount that we must levy in order to receive state funding. This is equalized statewide so that if our assessments go up, our state revenues go down. Discretionary millage is the maximum amount allowed by law. Because we levy the full amount, we receive $4.3 million in additional state dollars to get us up to the state average per student. Additional voted millage is the amount approved by the voters in August of 2018. Capital projects millage is the maximum amount allowed by law to support our capital program. Overall, there is a rate reduction of 0.12 mils or 1.75%. This may seem like a contradiction to the previous slide, where stated there is no rollback of the RLE this year. This reduction is because statewide taxable values increased compared to the original state estimate used in the first FEFP calculation. The legislature approves a certain dollar amount to be generated by the required local effort. The significant increase in property values would have resulted in more local funding beyond what was approved by the legislature, and therefore a reduction was made to the RLE to generate only the dollar amount approved during the legislative session. This is the history of Orange County Public Schools millage rates. Required local effort set by the state is in the red rate in the middle of each bar. You can see that the RLE has decreased by 1.936 mils since FY10. The legislature sets the millage rate school districts are required to levy. Based upon feedback from the board in FY20, this slide was added, which represents the percentage increase in the property values statewide as compared to the percentage increase in revenues generated by the required local effort throughout the state. As you can see, in fiscal year 17 and 18, the legislature did not allow any increase in the revenues from the required local effort. In fiscal years 19 to 21, they have only allowed revenue increases based upon new properties added to the tax roll. The legislature halted their policy, at least for the current year, and has allowed the average RLE millage rate to remain the same as the previous year. This is to address the revenue shortfalls at the state level. On slide 9, the rollback rate is a calculation that eliminates the impact of increased evaluation. It is used only in the advertisement of the budget and in the millage adoption language. Rolled back rate, we're required to disclose this to you. The required local effort is 2.89% under the rolled back rate. The total millage is 1.31% under the rolled back rate. With Save Our Homes, residential property can only increase at 3% or CPI, Consumer Price Index, whichever is less. CPI is only 1.4%, so that is the maximum increase for applicable assessed values. With the increase of 1.4% in assessed value and a decrease in the tax rate of 1.75%, the homeowner of a $229,000 home would pay $6 less in taxes. Commercial property is not limited by Save Our Homes. When the increase in property values is combined with a 1.75% reduction in millage rate, the change in taxes paid for the owner of a piece of commercial property valued at $1 million is an increase of $58 per year, or about $5 per month. Next, we'll discuss the proposed annual budget. On slide 14, you can see the budget process is continuous year-round. Remember, the budget is a plan for the year. We must adopt a millage and approve a total amount for the budget. How the dollars are spent is not set in stone. It can be amended throughout the year. Our budget summary identifies items that impact the district budget. The most noteworthy aspect of the new budget year is the elimination of the hold harmless provision, or $54.6 million for OCPS. The hold harmless provided a substantial increase in per-student funding in the prior year, saving the district from adverse consequences from the loss of enrollment due to COVID-19. In 2022, the district will have more students with less money. Board members continue to identify staff as a priority, and this budget includes non-recurring bonuses or supplements for employees. As you know, categorical funds are restricted and must be spent as intended. This budget includes an increase in the teacher salary categorical funding of $3.2 million, which will provide for a minimal recurring increase in classroom teacher salaries. Also included in the proposed budget is an increase of $1.2 million in the mental health assistance allocation, which aligns with the board's priority to support social and emotional learning. The temporary infusion of federal funding has contributed to an increase in fund balance by allowing operating expenses directly related to the pandemic be shifted to ESSER funding. The 2022 proposed budget maintains focus on the district's strategic plan and preserves academic programs, retains highly qualified teachers, and protects arts, athletics, and student activities. Thankfully, our local citizens value public education and continue to support the special millage. The special millage is folded into the operating budget and treated as recurring revenue to support our current level of operations. Here is a summary of the 5 major funds that make up the operating budget. Each fund has unique types of revenues and appropriations designed to accomplish specific purposes. The Capital Projects Fund does not include carryover project balances. They will be amended in September at the final hearing. Special revenue now includes our food service program as well as other special revenue. Our general fund. The general fund is the operating budget of the school district. The primary source of funding comes from the Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP. Per student funding is equalized statewide. Equalization means that increased revenue from local sources does not necessarily cause an overall increase in funding. For instance, an increase in required local effort revenues is offset by a reduction in state revenues. However, the additional voted millage is not equalized, which means we keep all revenues generated to benefit the students of OCPS. On slide 20 is the actual FTE for past years along with the projection for next year. Our current projection for FY22 is 204,857 FTE, an increase of 4,006 FTE over the fourth calculation of 200,851. This forecast incorporates all K-12 students, including charter school, McKay, and Family Empowerment Scholarship students. However, it does not include VPK students. It is worth noting House Bill 7045 eliminated the Gardner Scholarship Program and will fold any Gardner Scholarship students residing in Orange County into the district's FTE, similar to the Family Empowerment Scholarship students. Since these students are not included in our present enrollment forecast, it is possible the district will experience an increase in FTE. A student reserve allocation has been set aside for this purpose and will be handled as pass-through funds. This graph represents the total state appropriations, operating and fixed capital outlay, as a percentage of the total over the last 4 years. The first grouping, education, includes early learning, public schools, community colleges, and universities. As you can see, the percentage of budget slightly increased from the prior year. It went from 28.5% of the budget to 28.6% of the budget. This graph includes all funds, including the infusion of federal funding. This graph represents just the education appropriations as a percentage of the total over the last 4 years and compares the 2021 first calculation to the 2022 first calculation. As you can see in the second grouping, less money has been appropriated to public schools. The reduction is primarily due to the statewide decline in student enrollment. On slide 23, we have a comparison of funding per student over the last 14 years. This graph is based upon the second calculation for all years. For this year, our regular per student funding is $466 above July 2007 second calculation shown in orange, or 6.37% increase. For 2022, regular per student funding is $29 above last year's amount shown in orange. This equates to 0.38% increase in per student funding. Note that this chart is based on a point in time. The July 2020 funding is based on the second calculation, where we were estimating 209,400 students. The chart is intended to demonstrate a trend over time using the same data point each year, and to show the public that we are still trailing behind in buying power from 2007. Including our special millage, shown in dark blue, our total funding increased $66 per student. Even with the special millage and including all the categoricals, you can see we still have a reduction in purchasing power of $714 per student over the July 2007 amount. Without the voters in Orange County supporting the special millage, we would have a much larger shortfall in needed revenues. The CPI, or inflation factor being used, is less than 2% on average over the past 15 years. Here is a graph of the state general revenue in support of education. The percentage of revenue going to education decreased from 51.3% to 48.8%. The percentage remains well below the pre-lottery amount of over 60% and at nearly the same level as during the Great Recession. This graph shows you the percentage of general revenue going to support K-12 schools over the past 9 years. You can see the percentage of state general revenue supporting public schools has decreased this year. Slide 26 are the lottery appropriations. In the early years of the Florida lottery, 60 to 70% of lottery dollars coming to education were for public schools. You see the green bars. That number is now only 35%. There are no dollars allocated again this year for the school recognition program. Of the 35% coming to public schools, none of these dollars would be considered educational enhancement. 87% supports the regular FEFP funding, and 13% is for the district's post-secondary program. The orange or rust color bar at the top is primarily funding the Bright Futures Scholarship Program. Here is a breakdown of our estimated revenues by source. There was very little change in these percentages from last year. Appropriations. Slide 29 identifies financial implications that need to be considered when approving the district's FY22 budget. It is difficult to estimate FTE enrollment changes. The pandemic has provided parents an opportunity to explore other options for their child's education, and we have seen an increase in enrollment in virtual education. Again, our funding is based on a projected enrollment of 204,857 FTE, an increase of 4,006 students over the fourth calculation of the prior year. If the projected enrollment is not realized, funding will be impacted. The legislature increased FRS rates by nearly 1%. The impact to the general fund is about $8.4 million. If we add in food and nutrition services, as well as grants, the total impact is $9.5 million to all funds. The Family Empowerment Scholarship Program began in 2020 with an impact to OCPS of $10.6 million. In 2021, the legislature more than doubled the number of scholarships available, and the impact to OCPS was 3,323 scholarships going to private schools, resulting in a reduction to the district of $21.5 million. Student enrollment has projected Family Empowerment Scholarship enrollment of 3,997 for this year, with an estimated financial impact of $25.7 million to OCPS. ESSER funding is being infused into the general fund budget, freeing up non-recurring dollars for other purposes. Functional appropriations remain fairly constant. Around 75.5% of all appropriations are in the instruction and instructional support functions. The instruction and instructional support area shows the greatest increase in appropriations this year. And now Judith Padres will present the capital budget.
The total capital budget is $1.4 billion. The primary revenue sources are sales tax, property tax, and impact fees. This budget includes minimal state support for capital. The primary uses are for comprehensive renovations, new schools, capital renewal, and debt service and operations. This graph reflects our 5-year forecast of capital revenues. The light blue line for other state revenue shows our CONDS projected appropriation. These are generated from auto license fees and mostly used for safety purposes. We are anticipating to receive $8.5 million. The PICO line in burgundy shows the funding that we will receive from the state as pass-through for charter capital. The estimated amount is $8.75 million. As a reminder, there are no guarantees that the legislature will continue to fully fund charter capital from PICO funds moving into the future. The gold bar represents our sales tax revenue projections. We're estimating $233 million for fiscal year 22. This is an increase from what we had previously presented in the last workshop due to the March and April collections, which came closer to FY19 than what had been previously anticipated. In addition, we're also using EDR projections as a basis. We will continue to review our numbers to ensure they align with collections and appropriations. The dark blue bar shows our impact fees. Impact fees are difficult to predict. We're anticipating to receive $53.3 million for fiscal year 22. The orange bar represents our 1.5 capital mill revenue projections. This is the equivalent of $247.8 million. This graph illustrates our proposed capital project use of funds for the upcoming year. Carry forward funds have not been incorporated into the budget. The largest portion of our budget is used for debt service at 31.59%, followed by district-wide capital at 30.64%, which includes expenditures related to district-wide construction, functional equity, safety, ancillary, painting, capital renewal, and site improvements. And the third largest use of funds is additional schools at 15.05%. On slide 35, the proposed capital plan reflects the following: funding for 23 relief schools, 13 elementary schools, 1 K-8, 5 middle schools, and 4 high schools. The opening year is based on recommendations received from the Advanced Planning Committee. Functional equity: these are projects primarily intended to add permanent instructional space and reduce some portable instructional spaces. Allocate funding to a list of pre-2003 sales tax schools. These are schools that never made it to the original sales tax list because of the recent construction work at the time. Funding is also included for repurposing schools and capital renewal. In accordance with the referendum, a portion of the sales tax revenues is transferred to the capital renewal fund to cover major system replacement needs. This plan continues to fund that transfer. Based on anticipated projects, we're projecting that the capital renewal fund will be fully committed by fiscal year 2029. These are our proposed 5-year new school openings. Our CIP is funding schools based on the opening year recommended by the Advanced Planning Committee. We have 3 new schools opening next month, following by 5 schools, 3 elementary schools, 1 K-8, and 1 middle school opening in August of 2022. On slide 37, in August of 2023, we're opening 1 middle school. In August of 2024, we're planning to open 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. As mentioned at the budget work session in June, the opening year for 3 of the sites included in this slide has changed from what's in the FY21 adopted CIP. Site 129 is now replacing Site 45, and due to this new location, the AP recommended opening year is changing to accommodate the construction schedule. Site 118 is being proposed to open in 2024. This change in the opening year is due to limitations related to finding a site in the target zone. Also, in this proposed plan, the opening year for Site 50 is changing to 2024 due to overcrowding and growth in the area. Again, the opening years in this proposed plan align with the Advanced Planning Committee recommendations. On slide 38, comprehensive projects that are in construction. This slide only shows the projects that are moving into the construction phase this year. Orange Technical College at Orlando and Building 8 at Hungerford Elementary School. As you know, we have projects that are in their 2nd year of construction. Those are not reflected on this slide, such as Meadowwoods Middle School. The next slide, comprehensive projects in design. The design of Orange Technical College and Mid-Florida West Side and Winter Park is projected to be completed in fiscal year 23. These are part of the final school projects from the original list of 136 sites. In addition, 5 pre-2003 sales tax projects will be moving into the design phase during fiscal year 22. Those are Colonial High School, Howard Middle School, Lakeview Middle School, 3 Points Elementary School, and Winter Park High School. On slide 40, our proposed CIP plan also includes the funding for buses, which are on a 10-year replacement cycle, funding for portable moves and leasing, which is included to help manage population fluctuations. Of the $28.4 million, $10.1 million is for leasing and $18.3 million is for portable moves and installations. Charter school funding, which is just a flow-through from the state, and there are dollars again included in the plan for district-wide painting needs and for digital technology replacement, which addresses replacement of classroom technology and digital curriculum-related infrastructure. This concludes the capital portion of our budget presentation.
The Debt Service Fund. This fund on slide 42 is used to retire the indebtedness the school district has incurred for construction projects. The primary source of funds is a transfer from the Capital Projects Fund. There is no significant changes in the Debt Service Fund. Our Special Revenue Fund. The Special Revenue Fund for past years included the district's food service program. Beginning in 2022, and based on new reporting standards, the district is required to add special revenue other funds to the financial statements. These other funds are primarily school internal accounts and extended day programs. The food service program is supported primarily from federal reimbursement and USDA commodities, and also from fees charged for meals served. Food and Nutrition Services will expect to end FY21 with a gain in fund balance. The USDA has granted flexibilities that have allowed program operators to continue serving free meals to all children, and this will continue through 2022. Economy of scale in food preparation, along with federal reimbursement for all student meals, has allowed us to operate at a gain. There are no changes in meal prices for next school year. Slide 46 points out that special revenue other funds are restricted or committed for specific purposes. School internal accounts are used to account for monies collected and dispersed by each school through fundraisers and other student-related extracurricular and co-curricular activities. Extended day accounts are used to account for all monies collected and dispersed in support of the program. The Extended Days program before and after school activity provides a safe and supportive environment for all children. The main source of revenue is user fees. Internal Service Fund. The Internal Service Fund accounts for the district's Employee Benefit Trust Fund, Property Casualty Loss Fund, and Printing Services Fund. The Employee Benefit Trust Fund revenue comes from board contributions for employee coverage and deductions for employees and dependent coverage. The expenditures of this fund include payment for medical claims, prescriptions, and mental health. Through ESSER funding, the district was able to reimburse the Employee Benefit Trust Fund for the cost of COVID claims and prescriptions totaling $12.8 million. The district currently offers 3 plan options, with one of the employee-only options available at no cost to the employee. Board contributions for employee-only coverage is $9,289 per employee. The Property Casualty Loss Fund includes payments for property, liability, workers' compensation claims. Revenues for this fund are from charges to other funds. The Printing Services Fund is self-supporting and receives revenues from charges for services to schools and departments. And now our remaining actions. I will turn it back over to the superintendent for comments and discussion. Once discussion is completed, the total millage must be adopted, and subsequently, the 2021-22 tentative budget must be adopted and establish a date for the final hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Concolino. Excellent job, members of the board, Madam Chair. certainly ready to answer any questions, hear your discussion. Again, the opportunity today, or the goal before you today, is to adopt the total millage so that we can transmit it and adopt your tentative budget. Madam Chair.
Mine is not a question. Mine is more of a comment. I mean, every time we look at the budget and we look at the restrictions within the revenue, it's always so challenging. I know that where we have the ability to change things, we can change it throughout the year. Unfortunately, those buckets, every time we go over the local effort, the millage rates, the states reappropriating dollars that were traditionally public school dollars, that gets tighter and tighter. And I know that in our communications committee, we're going to be talking about the best ways to communicate, not only on the local level, but certainly once again back to our legislators and our government in Tallahassee to try to break that logjam of getting them to understand that the budget is always challenging, but as we heard from many of our speakers this evening, it's even more challenging when you have housing rates going up 19% and so much topsy-turviness because of the pandemic. So it's more observation than it is comment. There's not a lot to comment on at this juncture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do just have a couple of clarifying questions that came to me as you were going through your presentation, and thank you so much for that presentation and for all the time that you spent with all the board members going over the budget the last couple of days. I know we all had questions and kept you past your your allotted time, so we appreciate your patience. You were talking about the millage rate, so it's correct that the state did not roll back the millage rate for this year.
Correct.
And what did that mean for our district dollar-wise?
So the issue has been with the rollback is that we have only been able to generate those dollars for new construction. But this year, where I mentioned that the legislature deviated from prior years, is that they were allowing not only the new, but the increase in property values. The issue and why we are showing a decrease in our millage of 0.12 is because the property values went up so much more than what the state had originally budgeted for, that the FEFP cannot exceed the total local dollar amount. So in order to not exceed what was approved by the legislature, not just Orange County, but across the state, then millage rates had to actually come down because property values went up.
So is it, and I'm just trying to understand it, because if I have questions, I'm sure that those listening in do as well. So even though that the millage wasn't rolled back because house prices went up exponentially and the legislature didn't project that we actually are losing dollars in what we could have made based on actual dollars.
Correct. The only thing I want to correct you on, it's not the housing price that went up as the property value.
The value. I'm sorry, I knew that. I misspoke. At any time when that happens, is it just this is what happens, or does the legislature ever come back and adjust those numbers to give us the millage that they stated?
I don't believe so.
No. Okay. And do they ever backfill the millage in their budget? Like we've heard in past that when they reduced or they rolled back the millage, they have then backfilled it in other areas in the budget. categoricals or in other areas that would be flexible dollars? No.
The dollar amounts, various categoricals and such within the FEFP were established. The second calculation, what that does is provides, we get the final assessment from the property appraiser's office, and then based on what that total statewide valuation is, the millage rate is established. That's really what occurs during the second calculation.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. And then you said we had a $61 increase to our BSA this year in the FEFP?
No, $29, 29,
okay.
Let me get there. What, do you recall what slide?
No, I'm sorry. I wrote it down. I might have written it down wrong as you were talking. I thought I heard $61. I should know this. I look at the budget all the time. I mean, the FEFP that comes down from the state. I just don't remember.
I
off the top of
remember
my
saying
head.
61, I'm just looking for that slide.
I think you're right. I think it was in the, I don't actually remember.
Member Gallo, what was your question?
The BSA, the increase in the BSA from the budget from the state.
The per state funding increased by $29 over last
29,
year.
okay.
Mhm.
And our class size reduced by how much?
25.5 million. Let me just confirm that for you. Yes, $25.5 million class size reduction.
Okay. And then my final question, is my time up? And
No,
this
go
could
ahead.
maybe be to the superintendent. If we could just get our current projection for enrollment, I know that there's a 10-day count, but I mean, could we just find out where we are, where we stand like right now with enrollment of students? Are we even near that projection of the 204, 850?
We can certainly see what's available. We won't know until the first day of school and they actually show up.
Okay.
Happy to get you our projection as best we can
Okay.
provide.
Thank you. And then finally, I know that we used to be really good about, in our little pocket book, we would say the percentage of dollars that are attributed out of the operating fund to administrative cost, and it was always quite low. It was usually one of the lowest in the state, if not in the country. And I haven't seen that in our pocket book in a while. I don't know if that's something we could add back in, or if you could share with us what that percentage is.
I'll get that for you.
We'll put it back in the pocket. We're still in the very lowest number, especially among urban districts. We are, I believe, still the lowest. But we'll get that. And I like your idea. We do need to put it back in the pocket facts so everyone has that on hand.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gallo. A couple of questions, tag teaming on that. I think it was Mr. Grimm who mentioned the percentage of our expenditures that are outside of the school, outside of our individual schools as opposed to other districts. I want to go back and look at that and see what that statistic was. Mr. Grimm, it was something you mentioned. I'm going to go back. I think it was your comments. I'm going to go back and watch that because I want to make sure how that compares to the numbers we always look at as the administrative costs. Because while it's a big number, it has always given me some comfort when I look at it relative to other districts. And so some of that testimony I heard today has, caused me to kind of rethink that. I think the one other, along the lines of Member Gould, it's not a question I had, and Doreen, I need to thank you. I think I took about twice as much time, and to the rest of the board who was waiting, I pushed everybody's schedule back, and I think we probably all did that, because this budget in particular has been very complicated because of the one-time impact of ESSER and the kind of ripple effects, and trying to understand it was harder than it usually is. One of the things I find also challenging about our budget is trying to explain it in a way that makes sense without spending hours, days, and weeks learning it is really challenging. But yet I think that the issue of our teachers, the situation that they're in, Member Gould, you talked about it, is so disheartening. And yet there's understandably very, very little trust in us. And that is also disheartening, but I'm going to go back to saying it's understandable, I think, when I would be asking the same questions if I were a teacher. I would be demanding answers. And I think we have to find a better way to communicate this really complicated stuff. So one of my simplest ways of looking at it is the year before I was elected, our teachers, our classified employees got a 4% raise. The first year that I was on the board, first year that most of us were on the board, I mean, we came in just determined, as the previous board was, I think, really determined to do right by our teachers, by our classified employees. We gave a 5.5% raise. That's 9.5% in 2 years. So we're the same board. We care the same amount, if not more. And then last year, classifieds got nothing. Nobody else in the organization got anything. Teachers, if you were a brand new teacher, was a good year. If you were a relatively new teacher, it was a pretty good year. If you were a seasoned teacher, it was a lousy year. And the belief that we have a bunch of money and we just didn't want to pay our teachers, that this doesn't make sense to me. Why? It's not like if we don't budget the money, it benefits us. And every one of us understands that without our teachers, education doesn't exist. There's no more important component, there's no more important person in education than the teacher. So we couldn't do anything last year. And we got more money last year than we had gotten before. But different from every previous year, the governor decided that he was going to move those dollars we usually got, move them into a semi-categorical and tell us how they would be spent. And certainly his right to do that, to get our minimum wage up. It makes us look more competitive nationally to have our minimum wage up. But it didn't do a whole lot for the average wage, and it was completely unfair to veteran teachers. I don't know how many times we all discussed this. I know every one of you was in Tallahassee with me. One of our big challenges is that our delegation is with us, almost completely with us, but they're the minority. They're Democrats, and this is a very partisan issue, frankly. So last year, we weren't able to do anything except for what was given to us, what was suggested by the governor and given by the state. This year, we're in virtually the same position. We do have the ability to do one-time funds largely because the impact of the ESSER dollars that's offsetting a lot of our costs has allowed us to offer bonuses. And I totally, completely understand why a bonus it's better than nothing, but it doesn't cut it. You can't buy a new car with a bonus. You can't rent an apartment with a bonus. You can't even pay your utility bills based on a bonus. You need recurring revenue. That's what our teachers need. That's what our classified employees need. They need recurring revenue. The same challenge is, and I heard this, I watched the bargaining session, and I will tell you it was the hardest thing I ever watched, and I was not happy. I've never watched one before. I felt that it was rude, and there were things that I don't like, but the hardest thing for me was that I would have walked out of there not understanding a lot of things. So the issue of recurring revenue, I kept hearing, why don't we budget for raises? And the challenge is, it's just like a private citizen with their, my family. I can't budget a raise. I mean, I can put it on a piece of paper, but I can't make a raise happen. I can't budget to spend more money than I have. I have to get a raise from somebody else in order to spend more money, just like our teachers do, just like our employees do. They have to get money from us. We have to get more money to do that. We can try to juggle our budget around. We can look for places for efficiency. And the other thing that troubles me is we spent a whole year, the year after we approved the 5.5. We knew that was a stretch. We knew we had 4% that we could do. And we knew we needed to figure out how to restructure our budget to find that 1.5%. Because the only other hope was the state would come through, and they didn't. So we went through a process I don't know how many meetings we had, to go through line item by line item to figure out how to get those efficiencies that Mark Richards, I think that's his name, talked about. He did a very good job, but he talked about we needed efficiencies. And I frankly wanted to just come through my laptop, because I thought, but that's what we did. And I'm never going to say whatever we've done is enough, that there isn't an opportunity to go back and try harder. I'm never going to give up trying harder. But we can't give raises unless we get additional money. We can do it if we start just cutting everything, but we're cutting teachers, we're cutting programs. We can't do that. We need our teachers, we need our programs, we need our bus drivers, right? So we have to find if there's any extra fat. And at some point, there's no more fat on the bone. So can we look at it again? Should we look at it? Should we look at it every year? Absolutely. But the idea of having $60 million in recurring revenue that we didn't get this year, that's money we need from the state. And if every time they give us extra money, they're going to tell us exactly how to spend it, then that doesn't leave us the flexibility we need to spend it the way this board believes we need to spend it. And that's on our employees, especially for me. It is our employees. For me, it's not our administrative employees. It is the employees that are on the front line, that are making the least, that can barely afford to live in the community they serve. It troubles me enormously. It troubles me that because of our employees, our kids that live in this community can go to college, and yet the employees that are helping educate them can't put their kids to college. That's wrong. That's just wrong. And it angers me. And that's the message we take every year when we go to Tallahassee, and that's the message we've got to continue to take to the public to make sure that when that referendum rolls around, we have their support. Because without that, we are really in trouble. Now we're talking about having to cut programs and lay off employees. So I know when we had the tools, when we had the ability, we spent it, we gave a 5.5% raise. Things changed. It wasn't us that changed. It was the money that we have coming in, and the flexibility to spend it the way we thought we should. So I know my whole board commits to continue to carry that fight to Tallahassee and to do the absolute best we can, and to do whatever we can figure out how to do to build the trust, because impasse, maybe that will be a help. Maybe in the end that will be a vetting process that needs to happen so that somebody outside is looking at it. But trust is we are in this together, whether you believe my words or not. We are still in this together. Remember, Gallo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think I speak for me and probably the whole board when I say we absolutely agree with you in the predicament that we're in. And I think that in light of getting extra dollars from Tallahassee, we've got to be creative in how we figure out to give our teachers and our educators and our classified staff the money that they deserve. So I know that we've had a breakdown of the 1 mil before. The 1 mil is getting ready to come back before us, and I believe it was Mr. Grimm in the audience who mentioned looking at that 1 mil as going towards salaries. And I know we don't want to cut programs, and I know that a lot of that money goes for programs, but I'm just wondering if we could look at the millage, look at the dollars that we obtain from that millage, and see if there's a way to bring it, so, because we do pay teachers out of that 1 mil. We pay our art teachers, we pay our athletics out of that 1 mil, but is there room within that 1 mil? If we're really looking at everything we can do, then I think it would be imperative that we at least look at that and the dollars that bring in it and see if there is room to pay teachers or to include that in the 1 mil when it comes back up to the ballot.
Okay, I'm going to call on Dr. Jenkins. I do just want to reiterate, if we get the 1 mil, it's not additional funds. It's the funds we've been getting every year.
But I'm wondering if we could look, because we went through the
Expand.
budget. We went through the budget, like go through the 1 mil like we did the budget and see if all that money is still being used as cost effectively as possible, if it's still warranted, and if they're, let's make sure we're doing due diligence in every
Absolutely.
area that we possess. That's all I'm
Absolutely, I completely agree. Dr. Jenkins has pushed her button, and then I'm going to go to Vice Chair. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to speak to Member Gallo's comment. I think two things are important to note. Number one, the money from the 1 mil actually in the language that got the community to support it is what you have to spend the dollars on. Some other districts have actually run additional millage and said it is for teacher raises. And then in those instances, sometimes it's negotiated with the teachers. The raise is good for these 4 years. If it doesn't get renewed after 4 years, then you revert back and you lose that additional money. Our language actually says what we have been spending the money on, and every year we have to give an accounting of how that money has been spent. It shows up on our website, and we have to publish those outcomes. So the next time the 1 mil comes around, this board could very well say, instead of what we said previously, we'd rather trim some of those areas. It was to support some of the programs when the state was shortcutting us. If you decided to go that direction, then you just need to counterbalance and say what you're going to do about those other programs. But it has to be stated to the community up front what you're going to spend it on, and that's why we are limited at this point. Next time around, you might consider, like some other districts have done, saying we want to use that for supplemental teacher salary.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just,
Okay.
I think it's worth a
Absolutely.
review.
Yeah,
I think our
absolutely.
teachers deserve that.
I do too. I think the public would support it. Honestly, I think they would. I can't imagine that they wouldn't, and I think we can make a compelling case. I think the one thing that we'll have to look at is that if we are cutting valuable programs, that one, is that okay? And two, will the public support something that's a trade-off? So we've got a little work to do, but thank you for bringing that to the table, and let's definitely explore that. Vice Chair.
Well, you and the superintendent said a lot of it, but it's my recollection, and I didn't go back and look it up, but the majority of those dollars still go into supporting kind of the instructional and the functional, because let's face it, the biggest part of any budget in any operation is your wages and salaries and benefits. So whether you're talking programmatically or, core subjects, it would take a lot of surgical precision to look at these programs and say, okay, let's chop arts. Let's chop music. Let's chop chess. Let's chop, these athletic programs. Let's chop in these areas that provide the social, emotional, and often engagement. So I just want to lay it all out there. I don't want to just, right now we're very emotional, all of us, about the predicament we are once again in, trying to face all of our staff, not just our teachers, our frontline staffs that have had a huge gap in minimum wage to market wage for years. This is a very emotional issue, but we're going to have to step, as elected officials, we're going to have to step back from the emotion and figure out and weigh very judiciously the impacts on not only the employees we currently have, but also the well-rounded education programs that we offer that we're lauded for. So I just don't want to leave that out of the conversation.
And those teachers that are teaching those programs.
Right.
Which is the
So
bulk
that's
of the-
weighing and choosing staff if we have to surgically remove any components of any program.
Let me hear from Member Lopez. Member Lopez, it's so good of you to chime in. I know you're under the weather. I hope you're feeling better.
Yes, I am very sick, but I'm
so
here.
Sorry.
I'm getting better. So I agree with Chair Jacobs and School Board Member Gallo. Our veterans teachers deserve a better salary, and the state has to allocate more money for salary raises and benefits for teachers, and also I want to add the classified employees as well. Because I think that in order for us to be more competitive in terms of salary and recruit more teachers and more employees, we have to be we need to provide a great salary. But I know that we have an obstacle with the state, and I am glad that you clarified that as well. I also have a question, and it's about the reserve fund. What is the percentage of the reserve fund?
You want to answer that? And you know what? While you're on that subject, if you can take a minute, because that looks like a huge amount of money, if you could take a minute to explain that in answering not only Member Lopez's question, but just so that there's a chance that people can better understand that. That was the first question I had when I looked at this budget. Go ahead.
So for FY21, which we are still in the process of closing out, we won't be done until mid-August with that. So when we bring back the final adopted budget, we'll have firm numbers. But we do see an increase in fund balance in FY21, and that was twofold, primarily twofold. One was we got the $54 million held harmless from the state. We really did not cut resources, so we had the same number of staff, but we did have 8,000 less students. So that created some additional reserve. But primarily, it is the infusion of the federal funding. And what we have done is take in expenses that are part of general fund recurring expenses, and anything that could be tied to the pandemic, we have moved over to ESSER, which has then freed up our general funds, which has created an increased fund balance, which is what you are all using, or a good portion of it, what you are using then to provide the bonuses and supplements that you've offered.
Thank you. Member Lopez?
Yes, do we have a limit on the percentage that we should have in that reserve funding?
I wouldn't say that there is a limit. I would say
There's a floor.
Oh, I'm
Like a
sorry.
minimal-
Yeah, I thought she was talking high limit. Yes, there is a floor. We, of course, are required to keep the 3%. And then it is good fiscal policy to, in total, have between 5% and 6%. So that if there were a hurricane or some other major emergency, that we could dip into those dollars.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Member Byrd?
Thank you, Chair. 5 or 6%, where does that put us? How much would that be?
Well, your 3% is the approximately $55 million. So 6% would be about $110
and $10 million total in your unassigned fund balance.
Okay. Could you just clear up one thing that I have already asked you this question, but could you just share it again? As far as our line by line budget and what we project and what our actual costs are every year, how accurate are we typically? Because there's been a lot of talk about how we over budget our categories, and that was something that I asked you, so could you share that with us?
Sure. So if you look at our financial condition ratio, and that's straight out of the CAFR, which is our assigned and unassigned fund balance, that has decreased fairly steadily, consistently since 2016. So, and I could provide you all a snapshot of that. I do expect, I think we all do, for 2021, we're going to see that go up. But from 16 to 20, that was coming down. If we were consistently over budgeting, our financial condition ratio would not decline, it would increase.
Member Gould, Vice Chair Gould.
So I want to go back to the clarification on the reserve. We are required by state statute to keep a minimum reserve of
3%, and based on this budget, about $55 million.
Okay. So when you talk about a hurricane, just to let people know, if we have a hurricane that wipes out 3 high schools that cost how much to build?
Over $100 million.
Over $100 million. Each. We would need to dip into those funds because $100 million is a lot of money. So
Yes.
I want people to understand, and having to open 2 high schools this year, I knew it was $100 million to open the 2 new high schools. So, and we are required to maintain the 3%.
Correct.
So the delta there is really the 1 to 2% of what we have to spend, or if we go below that, we have to make back up that 3% within that first budget year?
We would not touch that 3%. That's why we're saying we want to have somewhere at 5 to 6%.
Right, because we've seen what's happened to other counties when they have dipped below that, and there has been some fiscal impact as well as
state intervention.
So when we start talking about these big giant numbers, that's a lot of money. But when you talk about having a catastrophic one-time event of, mass flooding, tornadoes going through, whatever those things might be, all of the sudden it's not that big when you look at the capital infrastructure of our entire enterprise. So I just wanted that ratio to be understood, that is really one high school's price tag, so to speak, to come from the ground up. Now, hopefully if we ever had, Charlie Jean Francis year again, I'm not wishing that, Murphy's Law, that we would not be replacing whole high schools. But when you spread it across the district, there was a lot of impact, even I think it was Michael or Eugene, I don't remember now, that impacted. So thank you for that clarification.
If I can add on, I think even if you were to subscribe to the idea that the 3% was enough, I think the other thing that is hard to understand about this, and I understand that, is that reserve, even though we see it there, we see a large number every year, it's not a recurring number. It's my salary is a recurring. Every 2 weeks I get a paycheck. My savings account doesn't do that. If I draw down my savings account, it's drawn down. Only recurring is if I put money back in. So if we used all the excess, which we used a lot of it in the 2019-2020 budget, that's how we got to the 5.5%. Not something I have ever agreed to in all the years I've been in office before, but we had 4% in recurring. And we said, well, we've got a large amount in our fund balance. We'll use it this time and hope that it gets replenished. It didn't. We went back to the drawing board. We took a hard look at our budget, and you can't do that every year. You can't find that every year. So I think I always want to look at that fund balance and make sure that it's not higher than it needs to be. I personally believe, I mean, at the county, ours was 7%. We didn't, that wasn't our requirement. That was a comfort level that we had. And hurricanes is a good example. Counties have to do a lot of, not just their own buildings, but a lot of cleanup. So that was our number. I'm not saying what percentage it should be, but I think it needs to be more than 3%. Right now, we need to better understand those ESSER funds, and a big part of that, as I understand it, is what makes up the proposal that we put on the table for our unions. And so once that's gone, it won't be there again next year. But I think we have to go through this process of asking these questions. This board needs to always ask the questions. One of the things that would help me is if we could identify, going back over the last couple of years, where are those fund balances when they go up? Where are they coming from? Because we hear this idea that y'all are intentionally over budgeting so that we can slide this stuff into fund balance. And again, I understand that I'm actually kind of a suspicious person. So to be quite frank, I think it's an asset, but I get it. I'd be asking these questions. And Mr. Grimm, I remember from last year, you spent a lot of time really delving into and understanding and learning this. So I definitely want to get your data from you and look at what you were talking about earlier. But if you could show us each year what made up the increases to the fund balance. And then also, when we drew down any of the fund balance, where did it go? I think what I'm talking about is essentially a sources and uses statement for fund balance for each year, so that we can at least answer those questions, because you can't build trust if you can't answer questions, And again, I watched all of that, and there were so many things that sometimes I felt like I had the answer, and I wanted to, just like, could I get into the room and can I try to explain? I'd love to see a PowerPoint presentation. You guys know how I am about PowerPoint I love a good PowerPoint presentation. I'd love to figure out how to bring this down to a level where if we're getting it wrong, we can get it right. If we're not getting it wrong, you can understand where we're coming from, so we can get back to a place of trust, and we can get back to a place where we can figure out how to use our collective voices to be more powerful. This is a frustrating legislature. But you can't give up. You guys are way too important. We can't give up without you. We don't have an education system, so we can't give up. Any Vice Chair Gould, and I'll let you close this out.
So I think we've talked enough about that, but I want to say thank you to the teachers that stayed tonight, and I want to call out Mr. Pollack and OSPA, who always stay to the end of every single financial discussion and are very well versed on our discussion points. I hope those that came and gave testimony listen to the rest of this tonight and understand that we don't ignore the testimony. We take it into the context of what we have before us in the numbers. And so I want to thank OSPA for always hanging in there and trying to fully understand what's going on, even when we don't agree on how it all should be used. So thank you very much.
Thank you for pointing that out, because Mr. Pollack, like Mr. Grimm, spends a lot of time understanding stuff that is extremely complicated. You take your job so seriously. You do it so well. And again, we don't always agree. I know we are not measuring up to what you need and what you expect, but it is helpful to have people like you, people like Mr. Grimm, that are willing to dig in to the weeds and try to figure this out. So we ready to move on? We are ready for a vote. I did it again. Pollard. Oh, you did it. Okay. All right. Sometime I'll tell you my story about names.
She made me do it.
Okay. I am willing to entertain a motion.
Right, and I would like to move, Chair. So the recommended, am I reading both the?
Do we have to take two separate votes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the first is the resolution for the millage.
Correct.
Whereas Section 200.065 Florida statutes requires the school board adopt a proposed millage for the funding the tentative budget and notify the property appraiser of its actions, and whereas the 2021 tentative budget is based upon a total millage of 6.737 mils, which is less than the rollback rate by 1.31% as commuted pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida statutes. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the School Board of Orange County, Florida, that the board does hereby adopt the following proposed millage to support the tentative budget for the 2021 fiscal year. Millage rates. Required local effort, 3.489. Basic discretionary, 0.748. Additional voted, 1.000. Capital improvement, 1.500. Total, 6.737. Be it further resolved that the superintendent immediately inform the Orange County property appraiser of the action of the school board in a manner prescribed by law. That's my motion.
May I interrupt, excuse me for 1 second?
Sorry.
Can I just clarify, that's the 21-22 year?
I'm sorry, did I say it differently? 21-22 fiscal year.
Yes,
All right,
thank
we
you.
have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second, Chair.
Motion by Vice Chair Gould, second by Member Covert. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? I'm sorry, Member Lopez, let me go to you separately.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Second item?
The second item is the resolution for the budget itself for the 2021-22 fiscal year. The resolution is number 1, approve the 21-22 tentative budget for the general fund of $2,319,737,091. Approve the 2020, all these can be done at one time, right, Amy? General Counsel, okay. Approve the 2021-22 tentative budget for the special revenue fund of $227,752,511. Approve the 2021-22 tentative budget for the debt service fund of $229,304,411. Approve the 2021-22 tentative budget for the capital projects funds of $412,313,665. Approve the 2021-22 tentative budget for the internal service fund of $343,346,144. Approve the date for the final public hearing for the FY 21-22 budget for 5:01 p.m. on April 14th at the Ronald Blocker Educational Leadership Center, 445 West Amelia Street, Orlando, Florida.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Gould,
reread my
could you
capital?
reread the capital one,
Sure.
please?
I corrected it, but we'll reread it just to make it absolutely correct in the budget. So capital funds approve the 2021-22 tentative budget for the capital funds, capital project fund of $1,412,313,655.
56.
Vice Chair.
Well, on here it's 55. On my paper that I got from Deborah, it's 55. Sorry, $56.
That's
dollars. $1,412,313,656.
Perfect.
And Vice Chair, could you clarify the date of the final hearing? I heard April, but I think it should be August.
September.
Oh, September. There we go.
September. Approve the date for the final public hearing for the FY 21-22 budget for 5:01 p.m. on September 14th, 2021 at the Ronald Blocker Educational Leadership Center, 445 West Amelia Street, Orlando, Florida.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
That was a lot faster. Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Member Lopez?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Perhaps what we could do is have it on the screen and move the requested action instead of making a board member read it all. Is there any reason we can't do that?
I was told it had to be read into the record, but maybe that's
Really?
archaic at this point.
I think for the viewing public, it's probably easier for them to hear it as well instead of just.
Okay. Okay.
We will
Okay.
research it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. We have no public comments. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Member Kester-Denel. Is there a second?
I second.
The second by Member Gallo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Member Lopez? Poor Member Lopez. Member Lopez?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're on non-consent 7.01. General Counsel.
Members of the board, this is your reappointment of an alternate citizen member to the Value Adjustment Board. And the name that was proposed was Sandra Fatmi Hill, and we have confirmed that she meets the requirements. And that was
All right,
Member
thank you.
Kester-Denel's.
Member Castellano, you want to offer a motion?
I move to support my recommendation.
Okay. Surprise. Motion by Member Castellano to support her own recommendation. Is there a second? A second by Member Byrd. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, Member Lopez. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now we're on to information items. Dr. Jenkins, do you have anything other than the information we're going to discuss regarding protocols?
I do, if the board will allow me just a correction of an error earlier because people were listening online. So there were some assistant principals appointed on the personnel agenda. I will run through them quickly so they can hear their name online.
Please.
Michael Byrne is the new assistant principal at Eagle Creek. Maria Demura is the new AP at Legacy Middle. LaQuelle Glenn is the new AP at Meadowwoods Elementary. Sarah Ann Harper is the AP at Westridge. Christopher Smart is the new AP at Meadowbrook. Latoya Thin is the AP for Liberty Middle. Tammy Young is the AP at Wyndham Lakes. And Katie Heiser is the AP for Corner Lake Middle School. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me provide that oversight correction. Happy to speak to anything regarding next year's protocols when you're ready.
Thank you, thank you. As I had promised the board at our rule development meeting last week, I wanted to bring back status on data collection from our local hospitals. So between the superintendent and I, we've reached out to all three of our major hospital partners, and they are all working together to try to develop a framework to provide us hopefully weekly data broken down by roughly by school levels, which I think would be very helpful as we try to what is the term, strategically identify places, surgically, that's the term, surgically identify if and when and where we should have masks in place or any other layer of protection. Some of the key points from the information that I've obtained so far, and again, this is, we had two of them were completely out of town, two of our hospital infectious disease specialists who have given us a lot of their time in spite of traveling. So I wanted to recognize Dr. Alexander with he's a pediatric infectious disease specialist at Nemours, and he's very well known and respected, and you guys have probably seen him on some YouTube videos explaining to people a lot about COVID and protections. And they're also doing great work in terms of providing information about school protocols. He has gathering data from Nemours. What he was able to give me for today is the current status. They have 5 COVID patients. Of course, those are all pediatric patients, 3 of which are in ICU. I know that is not a big number. But it's a starting point to understand. It did concern me a little bit that of the 5 that are in the hospital, 3 are in ICU. That's obviously a little alarming. The second doctor is Dr. Laham. Dr. Laham is the medical director for Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children, and he is also a pediatric infectious disease specialist. I have asked. I have an email from him, and I want to just use his own chart. So if our ABI team can put that up on the screen, that would be really helpful. Thank you. I want to say at first, as you look at this is kind of 2 charts. So the first 3 columns or bar charts are for those pediatric patients admitted, and then the second 3 are those not admitted. So if you look and you just see this continuous spike, they're really 2 different charts. So if you look at the bottom, starting at the bottom column, which makes a little more sense for me, less than 6 years old, you'll see that for the month of May, that says May 1, but that's all actually the total patient counts for the month of May. Total patients admitted at, was 7, and these are pediatric patients at Arnold Palmer. In June, it's 8. And then in July, and this was as of July 25th, it was at 15. And the row right above it is 6 to 12 years old. In May, it was 3. And in June, it was 5. And currently, it's at 4. So it's fairly static at that age for admitted. And then if you look at 12 to 17 years old, you start in May with 9. 3 in June, and 8 in July. Moving over to the not admitted category, you see much larger increases in numbers, starting at less than 6 at the bottom, 35 in May. June drops down to 13. That's a good thing. But then you see in July, it jumps up to 70. And I think, as everybody knows, the Delta variant arrived fairly recently, and I think we're just starting to really feel the surge from the rapid spread of the Delta variant. 6 to 12 years old. In May, the number was 8, not admitted, but children that had visited the ER at Arnold Palmer. 3 in June, going down again, and then jumping all the way up to 26. Relative numbers are low, but the rate of increase from 3 to 26 alarms me. 12 to 17 years old, May number is 11. In June, it goes down also. So kind of interesting to me to see that you see this May's kind of big, June goes down, and then we hit July where the Delta variant is really taking off in our community, and it goes all the way up to 29. Trying to think if Dr. Shu, who is, I think he is the medical director. He's been our MAC chair. He's been at a conference and I think on vacation with his family, and he is gathering similar data. The idea being that hopefully we'll be able to collect this data on a weekly basis so the board can monitor not just what we hear from the health department, which doesn't consider hospitalizations usually, it's more just positivity, but we can also see what's happening with our children in particular as far as hospitals. I think that will be meaningful. I do want to share with the board that I said at the meeting when we approved this, I remember I talked to the audience and said if I believe that we would be better off with our children in masks, I'll be back here advocating for this. I have given a lot of thought. I am concerned that our children do not have the layers that they had in the past. We had launch ed last year. We lost that ability this year. So our children really, most of them I think are going to be returning to the classroom. We're not going to be able to socially distance as well as we did. We're not going to be able to socially distance in the cafeteria. Parents that have written to me and would like their children in separate classrooms, like a masked versus non-masked classroom. In talking to Dr. Jenkins, and she's explained some, very obvious reasons why logistically we can't make that work. And also, I was hoping that at least if I had, especially an elementary school child that I sent in and told them to wear a mask, that we would have some way of enforcing that and that the teacher would make sure the child wore a mask. I'm not confident that we have a way of doing that at this point. So for me, if this were my decision alone, I know it is not. I'm just one voice, and this board has to work together to make decisions. If it were my decision, I would have a mask policy, a mandate in place for the beginning of the school year, monitor it, and look for the opportunity to lift it depending upon what happens. And I also, again, I mentioned we're a board. We have to make joint decisions. I'm going to suggest that if other board members reach a point where they think that we need to come back here and revisit this and discuss this as a board, as we get more data, that you communicate that to the superintendent. And if there are 4 board members that believe we should discuss this, I think we need to come back to the table and have that conversation. And let me open it up to comments from board members. Member Byrd. I do want to clarify, I am not putting this out here because I'm trying to find a quick, clever way to, to brush this or push this through. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that here's how we can move forward if at least half the board feels like we should move forward with that conversation. Member Byrd.
Thank you, Chair, and I really do appreciate your comments because, I too have been talking to hospitals, local hospitals, and their concern is so great right now, more so than when I talked to them before our last meeting when we put this policy in place. This week, the tone was totally different. So I am really concerned as well. I do, however, feel like we already did the board discussion, already had the policy. I like our policy. The reason I voted for that policy was not because I did not think kids didn't need to wear masks. The reason I voted for that was because it allowed our superintendent to put things in place if she got guidance or it looked locally like this was a concern that we needed to address. So I I am comfortable I think, in my opinion, we could just share our feelings with the superintendent, and she could make that decision based on our current policy. And I don't think that needs to be adjusted. So I am in favor of masking our unvaccinated, our children that do not have the opportunity for vaccines, because we've got, as you said, we do not have lunch ed anymore. We don't have another option for these kids. And when you look at those numbers, and granted, a lot of those kids were not hospitalized, but all of those kids would have to miss school. And we're going to have such an issue of chronic absenteeism, and that's going to really affect their schooling. I think if we can do anything to put a barrier in place to help, an additional layer of protection until they have the opportunity to get vaccinated, I'm all for that now, because the numbers are definitely worse.
Thank you. And Member Byrd, I am sorry I jumped over Vice Chair. I do want to clarify in case there was any confusion. I'm not saying that we need to change our policy. And I think the board, the superintendent her team did a great job of bringing us a policy that builds in flexibility. So I am not, if anybody thought I'm trying to change the policy, no, we have a provision in there. What I want is I want the board to know what is the means to bring this forward, and what would it take to bring this forward if we're going to have a discussion at the board table. I agree with you. The superintendent also has that authority without coming to the board table, but it is an option. Member Vice Chair Gould.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying your position, Chair, because I did want to point out that I also think that we wrote a good policy to be able to be responsive to the community in sickness and in wellness. So I do think that's very, very important, because what we don't want to do is corner us in either direction and not meet the needs of our students. The masks are absolutely the first line of protection, and there's global research on that. So I don't think that's in dispute here. I think the utilization of the masks and where cases are in our very large county need to be taken into account, and that we need to be able to, and I know we're working on better sources of data and real-time data through all of our resources in not only in the medical community, but along with the DOH. So I think it's very appropriate that we continue the conversation and support communication with the superintendent, as well as that two-way, as she may hear more quickly about certain datas in certain parts of our community, that we respond back, and that we, just as we did last year, kind of come up with a rhythm of knowing when we're going to put a school out to lunch ed, when quarantine is going to happen. I don't know that we know all that right now. The CDC is still working through that. The DOH is still working through that. It's a very tough predicament because we see the Delta variant going up. I just don't want to put our community back into an isolation mode too soon or too late. And that there's a fine line in there, I know. So I'm agreeing that we need to continue to have the conversations. I'm agreeing that we do need to find what we feel is that trigger, and it may be, tomorrow when we feel like we have to bring that back to a table, and maybe even have a small workshop on it to set some of these benchmarks as data comes out. I am not ready personally yet, even based on the data and working in the medical field, to maybe do vanilla across the board. I think we do need to look at the areas of high risk.
And so the one thing, a takeaway from that is it would help to have more localized data within our community in terms, so that I can try to request that from the hospitals, so that we can look school by school. Perhaps that would make Okay. I just want to at least hear from board members on their thoughts so that we can determine what data we do.
And it's not just the masks. Are we going to go back to screenings? How do we encourage vaccinations? How do we make sure all of our hospital partners have excellent short videos on vaccinations for all age levels? Nemours just put together a whole education package. How do we make sure we get those tools, not just the mask tool, but those tools in the hands of our parents and our staff so that they have the best data in order to make the right decisions? Because frankly, we can govern this all we want, but without everybody pulling together to make sure our neighbors, our children, our elders are at risk that can't get a vaccination are healthy, it's all of us working together to make it happen. And the masks are a tool, but it's not the only tool.
All right, thank you. Member Gallo, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate you continuing this conversation. And I agree about the data. I think one of the most frustrating things as a school board member is the lack of data available to us on a daily basis. We used to get daily numbers that aren't available. The numbers that we get from the state are weekly numbers. When you look at the most vulnerable, which are the unvaccinated children between 11, they group it together. Last week in that age group across the state, there was 6,999 cases of that age group testing positive for COVID. We don't know where they lie. We don't know where in the state they are. We can look at the positivity rates, but if you look at the positivity rates from the data that the state provides, you really have got to look at the count per 100,000 because a positivity rate is dependent on how many people tested. So you could have a small number of people tested, but a large positivity rate, which drives that number up. And it's not really a true indication of the spread of the virus in a community. It's just not information, good enough information for us to be sitting here to make a decision to mask all children throughout OCPS. I did vote for the policy. I voted for, as I stated at the time, that I do believe in a parent's rights to choose what's best for their child. I voted for it because I believed it when I asked several doctors, what is the protection for the person wearing the mask? Do they offer some protection? And they said yes. And I voted for it because I knew that if things got really bad and the situation's turned on a dime, and it has over the last week, that it gave the authority to the superintendent to require masks if necessary. I think that we need more data. I would like consensus from the board to send a formal request to the Department of Health and ask for the following things. I want daily COVID-19 case counts for all age groups, especially are those under the age of 12, but I want it separated out by age groups. I want daily COVID-19 positivity rates. I want the daily COVID-19 hospitalizations. I want the daily COVID-19 deaths in all the age groups. So when I list these, I meant by every age group that they track, and they track them all. And then I want the daily COVID-19 vaccinations. And then I would like to add one more criteria to that, and that is the breakthrough cases, because we are seeing some breakthrough cases. We don't know how bad those cases are, and that's very important information for us to have as a board so that we can protect our students and our teachers who have been vaccinated. Because if we're finding that this new Delta variant is breaking through, are those that it's breaking through, are they mildly sick? Are they very sick? Are we finding that those that were vaccinated in December, that the vaccine is wearing off and they're getting more sick with this new Delta variant? There's so much information that we need so that we can make appropriate decisions and do our jobs appropriately. I believe in a person's choice to get vaccinated or not. As I've mentioned plenty of times, I got vaccinated because it was the right thing for me to do, for myself, for my family, for my community. My fear is that we are masking and we are putting the burden of this virus on our children because the unvaccinated refuse to get vaccinated. And I don't think that that's a burden that should be on our children. That doesn't mean I wouldn't support it if the numbers called for it, because I want to be very clear before you start emailing me and telling me that I know more than the CDC and the American Pediatric Association, because I do not. That I just want to make sure that we're not putting a burden on our children, because there is a risk with masks. I know that people say, well, it's just uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable, but there is psychological effects of wearing a mask. There has been infections. These masks do get gross. The younger kids don't wear it appropriately. Member Gould mentioned the utilization. The mask is the first barrier of defense, but only if you wear it appropriately. And how many kids are wearing it appropriately? And this Delta variant is extremely contagious. So I don't know if I could get consensus now, but I would like consensus to issue a formal request from the School Board of Orange County for this information. From the Department of Health, we could add a date range on it. I have language that I've already kind of come up with that I can share with Mr. Howitt. But I think that that's important that we request that information. So I don't know if you want to do that now. I do have some more comments, but I don't know if.
So, and I'm sure this goes without, that's Orange County you want, specific to Orange
just
County.
specifically to Orange County, yes, ma'am.
Anybody disagree with that? Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. Let's get that to Mr. Howe and get a letter out as quick as we can.
Perfect. I'll give it to him right after this meeting. And the only other comments that I have is I'm really concerned, as Member Byrd mentioned, about learning loss, about absenteeism. We don't have the same modalities that we had in place last year. Will we be allowed to quarantine? Will quarantine be off the table? What will quarantine look like? What will the guidelines be from the Department of Health? My biggest concern is I want to make sure that our teachers are safe, that our students are safe, and I want to make sure that we don't increase the deficit of learning loss from last year to this year, because it's a constant revolving door, and we don't have the ability to make sure that those kids continue to learn, because student outcomes and student successes, that is our job and that is our responsibility. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Member Gallo. Member Felder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my fellow board members, I so appreciate your concern and your passion about this with regards to the mask wearing and dealing with this pandemic. In addition, School Board Member Gallo, with your wanting the statistical data having to do with the number of cases, I would like to add that district-wide, in terms of if there's a discrepancy, or if there's a larger portion, say in my district, District 5, when they were started off giving the test, they had zip codes up to let you know which ones, were more severe. And I want that added so that we can know, because, quite frankly, we don't know, this, and I'd like also a copy of that graph to, because it has grown tremendously from May to July. And I think parents reserve the right to choose if they want to vaccinate their children, they want to vaccinate themselves, and want to wear a mask. Because my concern is, and I showed this at the earlier meeting, do it again, but we have to be concerned if we mandate mask wearing, and the habit of this country has been when people don't agree with what you're doing, there can be some serious fallout. And what I'm saying, on the first day of school, the little first grader or the little pre-K, first rites of passage is school. And this is old, but these are some pictures of me in 1962. And I'm happy. I was a first grader. And I'm not concerned about anything but going to school and being happy. When you have children coming in who've been locked up all summer or the first 4 or 5 years of their lives, they come to school, and if there's, we've made some decisions that a lot of people don't like, and even though they're not allowed on our grounds, they can be on the street, and it causes trauma. The first day of school should not be traumatizing to children. Should be happy. Should be wonderful. Their little lives are beginning. So I am concerned about the mask, but I also know that we live in a country where you have the right to choose. We have learned in past that even with your right to choose, there are some very negative ramifications behind that. I want us as a board, whichever direction we go in, to be prepared for any ramifications if they come, whether we say yay or nay. Also, I did vote for optional because I do believe that you should have the right to choose, but I also understand little children under the age of 12 who cannot get vaccinated or whose parents may not even understand the necessity or the need for vaccinations, that they are vulnerable. And we've been elected to make sure we watch over our district, to do the best that we can with the members of our constituency. But I just wanted to share with you that whatever decision, we have to be strong in the decisions that we make and understand that we have to reach on the inside to do that which we know and believe that is the right thing to do as we make choices for these 200 and some thousand children that we serve in this great district that we call Orange County. So I wanted to say that, and it is my hope that we've already said that if things come up and variants change, that we've given the superintendent the right to make some choices. You know, but as school board member Gallo has said, if we could get that data, Chairperson Jacobs, to keep us abreast so that we can make informed decisions. And I seriously want to add, like I said, the districts, so we can see the numbers, because that will help us make informed decisions as our county mayor was making them when he put those zip codes up. We got to do it because you can't make people do things. So anyway, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Member Gallo has already written down modifying that to ask for it by zip code. Excellent observation. Member Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you hear me?
We can hear you well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing this conversation up, because I was very concerned. I am receiving a lot of emails, and even myself being sick make me think about so many safety concerns as well. I'm in agreement to continue the conversation and closely monitoring the positive rates in Orange County. I think that the school board member Gallo idea is perfect. I think that we should do it. And we have to provide a safe environment for all students and the staff. I just have a question. When we are talking about having the conversation, and you are thinking about doing it very formally, publicly, or just follow up with the policy that we already have through the superintendent because of the high rates of positive cases?
Dr. Jenkins and Ms. Enville, I'm going to ask you all in terms of my thought was if half the board members wanted to come back and have a public discussion and provide direction, but I'm going to leave it to Dr. Jenkins what your comfort level is.
I'm happy to hear from individual board members and alert you when we have 4 or more who wanted to come back for a formal conversation. I'm certainly happy to oblige that. I am also happy to hear conversation from individual board members if they feel the need to do so, as long as they don't mind me publicizing the feedback that I've received, should a decision be necessary.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is if the board wants to come back as a board, you're obviously you're going to support that. If board members individually want to discuss their direction, their suggestions for direction, you will make a decision based on that and inform the board.
And publicize what that direction was
yes.
From the board, yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes, okay, thank you. Member Colbert. Member oh gosh. Member Castro-Dental.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Member
Lopez,
Lopez, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did not finish. So when we're talking about formally, we're talking about, I want to be clear on this because we're against the time the school are gonna start, it's gonna start. And when we're talking about formally, we're talking about work session, rule development, and school board, or we're talking about public hearing. So I need more feedback on this matter, please.
Dr. Jenkins.
I'm sorry, I should have been more clear, Member Lopez. Actually, it's not talking about going back through rulemaking, trying to revise that policy again. Your policy has a provision for the board to direct me or for mandates to come down that would provide for an immediate adjustment to our face mask policy, and that's what we were referring to. It would either be a public conversation among the board members, or it would be individual feedback to me that gave me direction that I could compile then for any decision. It would not be going back through the rulemaking policy to try to change your face mask policy again.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Member Castellanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to address the members of the public for being so engaged in this issue. Over 500 parents and teachers have shared their opinions about how to keep our children safe, and I have read every email, watched every video that was sent, and followed the links provided to me. And we've all heard frustration from the people representing both sides of the mask and the vaccine issue. And it helped me understand, when I was able to really listen, that each person truly is speaking from a sincerely held belief. For those who don't believe that COVID is a serious virus, the mitigation strategies that we use are seen as an overreach and are harmful to their children. Those who believe that COVID is a serious threat view the mitigation strategies as uncomfortable but worth the inconvenience to save lives. And I believe that collective action with all the mitigation tools is the most effective strategy we have when we are all in the middle of a health crisis. At the beginning of the summer, when we were developing our new mask policy, I considered removing the mask requirement for most people when vaccination rates were going up and teenagers became eligible for shots and COVID cases were going down. And it looked like we were on our way to conquer this virus. But since then, the vaccination rates have stalled at 50% in our county, and the Delta variant, as we all know, is rapidly infecting those unvaccinated. I believe it would be a great disservice to not use our constitutional authority to provide for the health and safety of our students. We must protect not only the most vulnerable students and staff, but everyone who enters our buildings, because they return to their homes and their places of worship and their grocery stores and restaurants. They don't stay within the walls of our schools. OCPS is a data-driven organization, as Member Gallo pointed out, and the data out every day this week for our state and Orange County is already compelling. When it comes to masks for the upcoming school year, I strongly believe that we should abide by the recommendations of the medical community, our medical advisory committee, the American Association of Pediatrics, and the CDC, which each recommends that we all wear masks when indoors until factors indicate it's safe not to. The effects of our actions go beyond the schools. What we do to keep our schools operating safely affects more than those in our buildings. It affects our small businesses, which have struggled to stay afloat. It affects the ability of our tourism industry to rebound. It affects parents' ability to go back to work, especially our mothers. It affects the hospital's capacity to take care of patients. It affects women who are pregnant. And it affects every corner of our county. You cannot have both unmasked and unvaccinated people in our schools and expect our larger community to find our way out of this pandemic. Of course, we have the Orange County Virtual School as an option, but for most parents, that's simply not practical as they return to work. Our whole county is under an extreme risk. I believe we have enough information for the superintendent to act, and I hope that by acting sooner, we can take advantage of the early stages of the Delta variant's growth before it becomes uncontainable and before innocent lives are lost, And I don't believe we have the luxury of time with teachers back next week. And those are my thoughts.
All right. Thank you, Member Castellano. Any other comments from board members? Okay. Then I think the only, I'm sorry, General Counsel, do you have any reports for the board?
I do not.
Okay. And we have no committee reports. Any other issues that any board members want us to schedule for discussion coming up in the future? Member, gosh, I'm tired. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is late. So just so that I understand, because you'd kind of asked the superintendent for an update, like of our processes and related to the
Oh my
COVID
gosh.
cases.
No, yes.
And
No,
will we
no.
receive that tonight or?
No, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh. Yes. Dr. Jenkins.
Actually, we'll have the FAQ ready to go online for parents and others to view in the future. What the board asked me were some general provisions and what could we do, if anything, for our more vulnerable students. I indicated at the time that our abilities are quite limited. Let me just go through a few things that'll be included in the FAQ. First of all, the best defense we have when school starts back is for anyone who's not feeling well to stay at home. We're asking parents to monitor that, and certainly our own employees not feeling well. Particularly if you have a fever, it indicates that you need to be staying at home. Our website will include the symptoms for COVID, but if a child were sick with the flu and running a temperature, we would also say, please do not bring children to school when they're not well. Secondly, our dashboard will be up and running as it has been even over the summer for summer school. It will be up and running to keep information available, transparent to all of our community. Questions around quarantine and isolation, FDOH will be responsible for that. We will coordinate closely with them as well on contact tracing. As they receive their direction, then we will work closely with them as well. Questions around whether or not we have the capacity still for classes or entire schools to be able to pivot. Our digital platform is still in place. We don't have a capacity for synchronous learning unless a teacher and the entire class go out together and the teacher is still able to instruct. So we're going to be working on that as well. We have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. We do not have the capacity for hybrid either. We will not be asking teachers to instruct individuals at home while at the same time they are instructing students in class. However, it may be an opportunity for teachers to voluntarily turn on their camera and their sound so that Johnny, who's at home with the flu or with COVID, can listen. He won't be instructed directly, but there may be an opportunity that the teacher can voluntarily allow the student to listen in on class. So but that notion of pivoting an entire school or pivoting one classroom, our platform still exists. We just don't have the ability to offer that and still be paid on per student basis for offering that at large. Next, we will certainly still have our hand washing and sanitizing protocols in place, both with custodians and classrooms having those materials available. Masks will be available as well at school. If children forget or want to have a mask, we will have those available. Want to stress again, we under our current policy would not be able to ask teachers to enforce Johnny. I always say Johnny. I apologize for someone who has a child named Johnny, but that's just what comes to mind. I should say Harrison. That would be my son, who's a.
How about Lucy?
Lucy.
What about Lucy? Do you ever think about the young women out there?
You know what? So Harrison would be more apt to take his mask off. Let me just say Harrison comes to mind more so than Hillary. So anyway, so we don't have the ability to enforce. Can't ask teachers to watch based on parents' choices, but we can certainly encourage children, and parents can encourage as well. When it comes to bullying and harassing, we have a code of conduct. Our administrators will make it very clear. We made it clear to employees as well. There can be no harassing or bullying based on those preferences. That will be stressed, and then our code of conduct will be enforced. And then lastly, our LPNs will be in every school again, RNs at those special ESE units, but LPNs in our other schools to help support our children. Now let me speak specifically to some of our ESE students or those students who may have some special needs. For families who are choosing to send their children to school for in-person learning, We will have the PPE, masks, gloves, shields, desk barriers, extra cleaning of the classroom, and social distancing, because if you're in a self-contained ESE unit, there are far fewer students and adults in those classrooms will be able to provide more social distancing. For those families who decide not to send their children to school, I want to stress that we still have increased opportunities at OCVS, better than we've been able to offer in the past. ESE students can expect additional staff support if they are dealing with OCVS, and we can provide some specialized services. Another option is that we are expanding our hours for hospital homebound. We've revamped those services so that they can have increased additional hours for instructional services. And then we can also have options, hopefully, for in-house services or virtual services for some of our students. For all of those students who won't be returning to school, we certainly encourage parents to be in touch with their local school to make those provisions. Our ESE staff has been dealing with questions and making calls to some of our special needs students to make sure we are clear on what we can provide and assisting them with those decisions. The FAQ is much longer than that. I wanted to hit those highlights. We will try to go live with the FAQ document tomorrow.
Awesome. Any Member Castellano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions, I guess, for the superintendent. Can we add some information on mask hygiene? We heard a lot of problems about dirty masks and wet masks and how important it is to have them washed and cleaned at night, and so that they have extras during the day. Okay. And then my second question is about Meet the Teacher next week. Is that going to go ahead as planned, or is that is there a recommendation to go virtual or anything like that?
It's going to go ahead as planned. We are encouraging face masks for those who will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Member Castellano. All right. If there's not any further business to come before the board, meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
So, when can I get that graph?
Oh,